remember the cold first. Not the ordinary chill that settles into your bones during the long winter moons, but the deep, ancient cold that speaks of endings and beginnings all at once. The kind of cold that transforms the world into crystal and silence. My name is Kayla, daughter of the northern tundra, and this is how I learned to walk between worlds. The night of the moon ritual arrived with a sky so clear it seemed polished by invisible hands. Stars scattered across the darkness like crushed diamonds, and the aurora rippled in veils of green and blue above our village. Elders said the lights were the roads spirits traveled, but I had never believed in such things, until that night. I stood among my people, 20 summers to my name, marked for the ritual by birth. I had arrived during the eclipse when the moon disappeared and returned transformed. A portent, the elders whispered. A sign that I would one day serve as a bridge between our world and the next. The north wind carries your ancestors' blessing, my grandmother murmured, painting my face with cold blue paste that smelled of crushed juniper and something older, something that did not belong to this world. The symbols she traced, spirals and stars and crescent moons, tingled against my skin. My fellow hunters watched from a respectful distance, their faces flickering in torchlight. Among them stood Terran, his eyes reflecting the flames, his mouth set in a hard line. Once we had been promised to one another, but ambition had turned his heart cold. Now he served as second to our leader, Herrick, a man whose hunger for power had slowly transformed our traditions into something unrecognizable. "It is time," Herrick announced, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. The ceremonial furs draped across his shoulders gleamed silver in the moonlight. Kayla will complete the sacred journey and return to us with the blessing of the moon wolf. Or not return at all, I thought. The words unspoken but understood by all. No one had completed the ritual in 3 generations. Most who attempted it were never seen again, their bodies lost to the vast white emptiness of the tundra. Herrick approached, a bone knife in his hand carved with symbols so ancient even our oldest elders couldn't decipher them. "Bare your palm," he commanded. I extended my hand, palm up. The knife bit deep, and I refused to flinch as my blood welled dark against my skin. "Blood calls to blood," Herrick intoned. "Spirit calls to spirit. Walk the path of twilight and return transformed. Or not at all." The crowd's silence pressed in around me. My grandmother touched my shoulder one last time, her eyes wet with unspoken farewells. Then I turned toward the waiting wilderness, toward the sacred mountain that loomed in the distance, its peak piercing the rippling curtain of the aurora. I began walking, following the trail of blood I left in the snow. Behind me, the village grew smaller, the torches diminishing to pinpricks of light before vanishing altogether. Ahead lay only vastness, the stretch of tundra, the distant mountain, and the infinite sky above. The moon rose higher, casting the landscape in silver light. My breath clouded before me, and the cold seeped through my furs. The ritual required that I carry no weapons, no food, only my own strength and the ancestral knowledge passed down through generations. The wind picked up, carrying whispers that might have been voices or merely the sound of ice crystals shifting in the air. I walked for hours, the mountain growing no closer, my blood continuing to drip onto the pristine snow. The cut should have closed by now, but ritual magic kept it open, a beacon for whatever I sought, or whatever sought me. The first howl shattered the silence when the moon reached its zenith. I froze, scanning the horizon. The sound came again, closer this time. A mournful cry that seemed to resonate with something deep within my chest. My heart quickened. The moon wolf was no mere legend. It was a creature our people both feared and venerated. To encounter it was to stand at the threshold between life and death. A shadow detached itself from the darkness ahead. moving with liquid grace across the snow. Silver fur gleamed in the moonlight, and yellow eyes fixed on mine with an intelligence that stole my breath. The wolf was massive, its shoulders reaching my chest, its presence filling the space between us with something ancient and knowing. It circled me once, twice, its nostrils flaring as it caught my scent. My blood on the snow drew a path straight to where I stood. I remained still, remembering my grandmother's teachings. Show no fear. The wolf does not respect fear. It respects strength, stillness, and truth. The wolf completed its third circle and stopped before me. Only then did I notice the dark stain on its right flank, the matted fur, and the slight favoring of its hind leg. It was injured. At that moment, something shifted between us. No longer predator and prey, but two wounded creatures beneath the watching moon. "You're hurt," I whispered, my voice strange in the silence. The wolf's ears twitched, and it took a step closer. I slowly knelt in the snow, extending my bleeding hand, palm up. An offering. The wolf hesitated, then lowered its great head to my palm. Its rough tongue swept across my wound, and a jolt of something like lightning raced up my arm. The cut sealed instantly, leaving only a silver crescent scar. My vision swam, the world tilting strangely around me. The stars overhead seemed suddenly closer, almost close enough to touch, and the aurora pulsed in time with my heartbeat. The wolf's yellow eyes captured mine, and I saw a mountain cave glowing with blue light, a pool of water that reflected not the ceiling above, but a sky filled with stars I'd never seen. A woman with my face but dressed in garments from another age, her hand resting on the head of a silver wolf. I gasped as the vision faded, swaying on my knees in the snow. The wolf watched me, patient, expectant. "What was that?" I whispered. "Did you show me that?" The wolf turned, taking several steps away from me before looking back. The message was clear. Follow. Rising to my feet, I took a step forward, then another, and another, until I walked alongside the great beast, our pace matched as if we had traveled together for a lifetime. "I don't understand," I said softly. "This isn't how the ritual is supposed to proceed. The elders said there would be a test, a challenge." The wolf huffed, its breath clouding in the cold air. Its yellow eyes seemed almost amused. Unless this is the test, I realized. To trust, to follow. The snow crunched beneath our feet as we walked, and gradually I became aware of subtle changes in our surroundings. The stars overhead shifted position faster than they should have. The mountain we approached seemed both closer and somehow different than the one I had initially set out toward. The very air felt charged with something I couldn't name. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, though I expected no answer. To my shock, a voice whispered through my mind, "To where you need to be." I stumbled, nearly falling. The wolf paused, watching me with those intelligent eyes. "You speak?" I managed. "Not as humans do, but you can hear me now because the bond has begun." The bond? Between guardian and keeper, between the moon and earth, between what is and what might be. Before I could question further, a new sound reached us, voices calling my name. Harsh, angry voices. The wolf tensed, hackles rising. Danger comes. I turned to see torches in the distance, moving rapidly across the tundra. A hunting party. Herrick's men. "They're following us," I said. "But why?" "This isn't part of the ritual." The wolf growled, the sound reverberating through the frozen ground beneath our feet. "They do not honor the old ways. They seek power, not harmony. They wish to capture a moon guardian, to bend its magic to their will." Understanding dawned, cold and clear as the night around us. Herrick had never intended for me to complete the ritual. I was merely bait, chosen because of my birth under the eclipse. My blood was the lure. "You're injured because of them," I said. "They wounded you." "Yes." "An arrow tipped with shadow root. It weakens our kind." Anger flared within me, hot and fierce. "Then we need to move faster." I broke into a run, the wolf matching my pace despite its injury. We flew across the snow, 2 shadows beneath the watching moon. Behind us, the voices grew more distant, but I knew they would not give up easily. My breath burned in my lungs as we ran, and the landscape around us blurred and shifted. The snow beneath our feet sparkled with an inner light I had never seen before, and the swaying auroras descended lower, their colors intensifying until they painted the tundra in swaths of emerald, sapphire, and violet. "We cross between worlds now," the wolf's voice explained in my mind. "Few humans can walk this path. The veil thins for those with the sight." The sight. My grandmother had used that word, watching me carefully as I described the strange things I sometimes glimpsed from the corner of my eye. Shadows moving against the wind, lights dancing where no fire burned, figures walking across the snow leaving no footprints behind. "What is happening to me?" I gasped as the world continued to transform around us. "You remember what you have always been," came the cryptic reply. We crested a rise, and I stopped in wonder. Below us stretched a valley unlike any I had seen before. Ancient trees with trunks wider than 5 men standing shoulder to shoulder rose into the night sky, their branches heavy with ice that caught the moonlight and refracted it into thousands of rainbow prisms. Between the trees moved shapes, some animal, some humanoid, some defying description altogether. "What is this place?" I whispered. "A crossing point, a sanctuary, home to those who walk between." The wolf led me down into the valley, where the air grew noticeably warmer. The trees seemed to bend slightly as we passed, branches dipping in acknowledgement. The shadows between the massive trunks shifted and whispered, and I caught glimpses of eyes watching us, some curious, some wary, all knowing. We followed a path that glowed faintly blue, winding between the trees toward the center of the valley. As we walked, I became aware of a gentle humming sound, a melody so subtle it vibrated through the earth itself. "I hear music," I said. "The song of the earth. All places sing, but few humans hear. You hear because you are awakening." We reached a clearing where a perfect circle of stones stood, each taller than me, and carved with symbols similar to those on Herrick's ritual knife. At the center of the circle lay a pool of water so still it mirrored the sky above with perfect clarity. The wolf stopped at the edge of the pool. "This is the moon's mirror. Look into it and tell me what you see." I approached cautiously, kneeling at the water's edge. At first I saw only my reflection, my face still painted with the ritual symbols, my eyes wide with wonder and fear. Then the water rippled, though no wind disturbed its surface. My reflection changed. I was still myself, but different, dressed in silver-white furs I had never worn, my hair longer and threaded with small crystals that caught the light. Around my neck hung a pendant shaped like a crescent moon. Beside me stood the silver wolf, whole and uninjured, its yellow eyes gleaming with power. Then the vision shifted again. I saw Herrick and his men entering the sacred valley, weapons drawn, faces twisted with greed. I saw the ancient trees withering at their approach, the magical creatures fleeing in terror. I saw the moon's mirror polluted, its waters turning black. "They're coming here," I said, pulling back from the water with a gasp. "They'll destroy this place. They seek what they cannot understand." The wolf's mental voice was grim. "This has happened before, in cycles as old as the moon herself. Always there are those who wish to possess rather than protect. What can we do? Complete the ritual. Become what you were born to be. The wolf moved to stand on the opposite side of the pool, its injured form reflected in the water between us. The moon's whisper requires a sacrifice freely given, an exchange of life force. Only through mutual surrender can the bond be forged. What kind of sacrifice? I asked, though somehow I already knew. I offer my immortal essence. You offer your mortal limitations. Together we become something new, a dream keeper, guardian of the threshold between worlds. Fear clutched at my heart. Will it hurt? The wolf's eyes softened. There is always pain in transformation, but there is beauty too. From the distance came shouts, Herrick and his men drawing closer. We had little time. What must I do? Place your hands in the water. Open your mind to mine. Remember who you have always been. I plunged my hands into the pool. The water was neither warm nor cold, but vibrated with energy that raced up my arms and spread throughout my body. Across from me, the wolf placed one paw into the water, and our eyes locked. The world dissolved. I fell through memories not my own, the wolf running beneath countless moons, guarding the sacred places, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a shore. I saw myself through its eyes, not just as I was now, but as I had been before. A different body, a different time, but the same soul. Again and again, lifetime after lifetime, we had found one another. Sometimes I completed the transformation. Sometimes I failed. Sometimes we parted in sorrow, sometimes in triumph. The wolf fell through my memories too, my childhood in the village, my grandmother's teachings, and my growing awareness that I did not quite belong. My fear and my courage, my doubts and my certainties. We merged and separated, like dancers circling one another in perfect rhythm. Remember, the wolf urged. Remember the promise. And suddenly, I did remember. Standing in this very spot centuries ago, my hand on the head of a silver wolf, speaking words in a language I no longer knew but somehow understood. As long as the moon walks her path across the sky, I will guard the threshold. I will guide the lost. I will remember when others forget. Power surged between us, and the water of the pool glowed with an intense silver-blue light that shot upward in a column, connecting earth to sky. The aurora above responded, descending in curtains of color that wrapped around the pillar of light. Pain lanced through me. Not the pain of injury, but of expansion, as if my very being grew too large for my physical form. I screamed, but the sound transformed into something else. A howl that echoed the wolf's own cry. The wolf's form dissolved into particles of light that swirled across the pool toward me. At the same time, something of my own essence flowed toward the wolf. We exchanged parts of ourselves, becoming neither fully human nor fully wolf, but something in between. Something more. Yes, the wolf's voice encouraged. Accept what you are. The transformation continued, building in intensity until I could no longer distinguish between myself and the wolf, between the water and the sky, between past and present. Everything was light and sound and sensation. Then, abruptly, it stopped. I found myself standing in the center of the pool, which was now merely inches deep. My body felt simultaneously lighter and more substantial than before. Power hummed beneath my skin. I looked down at my hands and saw that the blue symbols painted there for the ritual now glowed from within, no longer mere pigment, but part of my very being. Around my neck hung the crescent moon pendant I had seen in the vision. My clothes had transformed into silver-white furs, and beside me stood the wolf, its injury healed, its yellow eyes now flecked with the same blue that marked my skin. "It is done," the wolf said, its mental voice now clearer than before. "We are bonded." "What happens now?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my ears, layered somehow, as if multiple versions of myself spoke at once. "Now we protect what must be protected." We turned as one to face the edge of the clearing, where Herrick and 5 of his men emerged from between the trees. They stopped short at the sight of us, their expressions shifting from triumph to uncertainty. "Kayla," Herrick called, his hand tight around his bone knife. "Step away from the beast." I felt a smile curve my lips. "The beast and I are one now, Herrick. The ritual is complete." Anger flashed across his face. "That's impossible. No one completes the ritual anymore. That's not how this works." "Because you perverted the ancient ways," I said, understanding flowing through me with each passing moment. "You used the ritual as a way to lure the moon guardians, to wound them, to attempt to capture their power for yourself." Taryn pushed forward, weapon in hand. "Herrick has led our people to prosperity. The old ways made us weak. Magic is a tool to be used, not worshipped." "Magic is neither tool nor God," I replied, the words coming from somewhere beyond myself. "It is the breath between worlds, the bridge between what is seen and unseen. It cannot be possessed." Herrick snarled, "Enough of this nonsense. Take her. Kill the wolf." The men moved forward, weapons raised. The wolf beside me growled, hackles rising. But I felt no fear, only a deep, resonant certainty. I raised my hands, and the symbols on my skin flared bright blue. "Stop." The single word carried power unlike anything I had ever wielded. The men froze in place, unable to move forward. "I am Kayla, Dreamkeeper, and Guardian of the Threshold," I said, the title rising from ancient memory. "You have violated sacred ground, Herrick. You have shed innocent blood. You have forgotten what our people once knew, that we are stewards, not masters." "Kill them!" Herrick screamed, fighting against the invisible force that held him in place. One of the men managed to knock an arrow, drawing his bow with trembling hands. The wolf and I moved in perfect unison. As the arrow flew, I caught it midair, the shaft turning to frost beneath my fingers. The wolf leaped, not toward the men, but in a circle around them, trailing silver light that formed a containing ring. "You cannot win this battle," I told them. "Not here, between the worlds." "Then we'll bring more men," Herrick hissed. "We'll burn your precious trees. We'll drain your magical pool. We are many, and you are one." "Show him," the wolf suggested. I nodded and swept my arm toward the pool behind us. The water rippled, and then figures emerged. Other dreamkeepers from across time and space, some human-like, others more wolf than person, all marked with the same glowing symbols I now bore. They formed a silent semicircle behind us, dozens strong. "We are many," I corrected, "and we have guarded the sacred places since time began." Fear finally crept into Herrick's eyes. "What do you want?" "Leave this place. Return to our people. Tell them the truth of what the ritual was meant to be. Tell them a Dreamkeeper walks again." "And if I refuse?" I smiled, feeling the wolf's fierce joy mirror my own. "Then you will wander the space between worlds until you learn humility. It might take several lifetimes." I knew he sensed its truth. If I willed it, I could strand them in this twilight realm, where time moved differently, where human concerns diminished against the vast tapestry of existence. Herrick's shoulders sagged in defeat. "Release us," he muttered. With a gesture, I dissolved the containing circle. The spectral dreamkeepers behind us faded back into the pool. "Go," I said. "Remember what you've seen here today." The men backed away slowly, then turned and fled through the trees. Only Taryn remained, his expression conflicted. "Are you coming back?" he asked softly. I exchanged a glance with the wolf. "Yes, but not as who I was." "What will you do?" "Restore what was lost. Guide those who are ready to listen. Walk between worlds." He nodded slowly, studying my transformed appearance. "I never understood you. Perhaps I wasn't meant to." "Perhaps," I agreed, "but understanding can come with time." After a long moment, he turned to follow the others. I watched him go, feeling a chapter of my life closing. "Your first test as Dreamkeeper," the wolf observed. "You chose mercy." Was that the right choice? There is no right or wrong in such matters, only consequences. We shall see what grows from the seeds you've planted today. We turned back to the moon's mirror, which had returned to its still reflective state. In its depths, I could now see pathways, shimmering routes connecting this sacred place to others around the world. So many, I breathed, all in need of guardians, all in need of those who remember the old promises. Where do we start? The wolf's eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom. We begin with rest. Transformation requires recovery. For the first time, I noticed the bone-deep exhaustion that pulled at me. Where? This way. The wolf led me deeper into the circle of standing stones, to a place where the earth itself had formed a natural hollow beneath the roots of one of the massive trees. Soft moss carpeted the ground, and the air was warm, despite the winter night outside the valley. I settled into the hollow, and the wolf curled beside me, its warm body a comfort against the overwhelming newness of my existence. Above us, through gaps in the ancient roots, I could see stars and the dancing aurora. Will I ever see my village again? I asked drowsily, feeling sleep tug at the edges of my consciousness. Yes. But you belong to all places now, and all times. Sleep, Dreamkeeper. Tomorrow we begin the real journey. As my eyes closed, I felt the boundaries of my being grow soft and expansive. My dreams merged with reality, and I found myself walking silver pathways between stars, the wolf always at my side. I saw other dreamers walking their own paths, and realized I could now reach them, guide them, and protect them from the nightmares that lurked in shadowed corners. This was my purpose: to be the bridge, the guardian, the keeper of sacred spaces where imagination and reality intersected. This was what I had always been meant to become. My wolf, my other self, padded silently beside me through the dreamscape. Between one step and the next, we crossed boundaries invisible to ordinary eyes, our footsteps leaving behind a trail of gentle light for lost souls to follow. Remember, the wolf whispered in my mind. Remember the promise. As long as the moon walks her path across the sky, I recited, the ancient words flowing naturally now. I will guard the threshold. I will guide the lost. I will remember when others forget. The words echoed across the dreamscape, rippling outward like stones dropped in still water. Somewhere in the waking world, a sleeper smiled in their dreams, feeling suddenly safe. And so began my life as Kayla, the Dreamkeeper, with a silver wolf as my guide and companion, walking the twilight paths between what is and what might be. Under the watchful gaze of the moon, we became guardians of the forgotten magic that still hums beneath the snow, waiting for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Every night, as you drift toward sleep, we walk beside you through the veil of dreams. Listen for our footfalls in the quiet moments between thoughts. Look for our silhouettes against the backdrop of your imagination. We are there, keeping watch, ensuring safe passage between worlds. All you need to do is remember. The first time I saw one of Kale's ice sculptures come alive beneath the moonlight, time itself stood still. The crystalline wolf padded across the snow-covered square, its transparent form catching the silvery light like 1,000 diamonds scattered across moving glass. Each step left delicate prints in the fresh powder, prints that sparkled with an inner luminescence. Its movements were fluid, graceful, impossibly real for something carved from winter itself. The air around it shimmered with magic, carrying the crisp scent of pine and fresh snow. I had arrived in the remote town of Winter Haven just days before, seeking inspiration for my photography among its snow-laden pines and frost-kissed mountains. The journey here had been long, a series of increasingly smaller plains, and finally a bus that wound through narrow mountain passes until the world became white and wild. The locals spoke of their mysterious sculptor in hushed, reverent tones, their eyes always drifting to the mountains that cupped the town like protective hands. But nothing could have prepared me for the magic I witnessed that night. The wolf turned its head toward me, ice-blue eyes meeting mine across the empty square. They held an intelligence that sent shivers down my spine. Not from cold, but from the raw power I sensed within. Behind it stood its creator, a tall man wrapped in layers of dark wool, his face half hidden by a thick scarf. Even at a distance, I felt the weight of his gaze, heavy as storm clouds before snow. My fingers clutched my camera, but I couldn't bring myself to raise it. Some moments weren't meant to be captured, only experienced. Beautiful, isn't it? An elderly woman appeared beside me, her voice warm as mulled cider on a winter's night. Silver hair escaped from beneath her knitted cap, and her eyes twinkled with knowing. Kyle's gifts bring light to our darkest nights. How does he do it? I whispered, unable to look away as the wolf dissolved into mist, carried away on the winter wind. The air where it had stood still sparkled with tiny ice crystals that danced in the moonlight. Magic has its price, dear. She patted my arm. Some say it cost him his heart, but perhaps... She gave me a considering look that made my cheeks warm despite the cold. Perhaps that's why you're here. I'm Celine Winters. Yes, the irony of my name isn't lost on me. And I've spent my life chasing beautiful things through my camera lens. From the northern lights in Alaska to fire dancers in Hawaii, I've documented magic in all its forms. But standing there in that square, watching the sculptor disappear into the shadows, I knew I had found something beyond mere beauty. I had stumbled upon a mystery that would change everything. The next morning, I found Cale's workshop at the edge of town, a converted barn with walls of weathered wood and windows that sparkled with frost patterns more intricate than any lace. The snow around it lay pristine and untouched, as if nature itself respected this space enough to tread softly. My knock echoed in the still winter air, accompanied by the distant call of ravens. When he opened the door, the scarf was gone, revealing a face that seemed carved from the same ice he worked with, all sharp angles and cold beauty. A scar traced his jaw like a frozen tear, silver white against his skin. His eyes, gray as winter storms, widened slightly at the sight of me. "We're closed to visitors," he said, his voice rough with disuse but carrying notes that made my heart stutter like snowflakes falling. I held up my camera, forcing myself to maintain eye contact, despite the intensity of his gaze. "I'm not here as a visitor. I'm a photographer, and I'd like to document your work." Something flickered in those storm cloud eyes. Interest, perhaps, or warning. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and something else. Something wild and winter sharp that seemed to emanate from him. My sculptures don't survive the lens. They're meant to be experienced, not captured. Then let me experience them. Let me understand how you create such magic. I stepped closer, drawn by something I couldn't name. I've photographed wonders all over the world, but I've never seen anything like what you do. His laugh held no warmth, but it sent sparks through my blood nonetheless. You wouldn't understand. No one does. Try me. That challenge hung between us like frost in the air, delicate and dangerous. Finally, he stepped back, opening the door wider. Your funeral, he said. But I caught the faintest quirk of his lips, gone quick as a snowflake melting. The workshop interior stole my breath again. Sculptures in various stages of completion filled the space. Dancers frozen mid-pirouette, their faces serene and expectant. Birds caught between heartbeats, wings spread in eternal flight. Wolves waiting for moonlight to grant them movement. The air held an otherworldly chill that sank beneath my skin, but it wasn't entirely unpleasant. It felt alive, electric with possibility. You can watch, Kyle said, moving to a half-formed piece in the center. Light from the high windows caught in his dark hair, highlighting strands of silver that seemed too young for his face. But don't touch anything, and don't ask questions. I nodded, finding a corner where I could observe without intruding. His hands moved with impossible precision as he worked, chips of ice falling like stars. The only sounds were the whisper of his tools against the ice and our breathing, which synced without either of us noticing. Hours passed, and I watched his creation take shape. A phoenix, its wings swept back in defiance of gravity, its tail feathers detailed down to the smallest crystalline barb. As dusk approached, he finally spoke again, his voice softer than before. You should go. It's not safe here after dark. Because that's when they come alive? I stood, flexing fingers stiff from cold and stillness. His hand stilled on the sculpture. Because that's when the curse is strongest. What curse? He turned, and the sorrow in his eyes made my heart ache. In the fading light, his face held shadows deep as glacier crevasses. The one that lets me create beauty but never touch it, never feel warmth again. His fingers traced the scar on his jaw, and I longed to replace them with my own. You should leave, Celine, before you freeze too. The way he said my name, like it was made of blown glass, something precious and fragile, should have warned me away. Instead, it drew me closer. I couldn't leave. Not when I saw how the loneliness had carved him hollow, like the ice sculptures he brought to life each night. Over the next weeks, I returned each day, watching him work, learning the language of his silence. Sometimes he would tell me fragments of stories, about learning his craft from his grandmother, about traveling the world studying ice artistry, about the night everything changed. Our relationship evolved like ice forming on a lake, gradually, then all at once. Each day, I noticed new things. How his hands moved like he was conducting music only he could hear. How his rare smiles transformed his entire face. How he would position himself between me and the door when his sculptures grew restless, always protecting even as he pushed away. I tried to create something that would last, he said one evening as we watched the sun sink behind the mountains. The light painted the snow in shades of rose and gold, and his profile against it made my fingers itch for my camera. Something permanent in a medium meant to be temporary. I thought I could defy nature itself. His laugh was bitter as wind through bare branches. Nature had other ideas. The curse had frozen his heart, binding his soul to the ice. His creations could live, but only in darkness, and only until dawn stole them away. Each sculpture took a piece of his warmth, his humanity, until he became as cold as his art. But you still create, I said, reaching for his hand. He pulled away before I could touch him, but slower than before, as if it cost him more each time. It's all I have left. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he had me now, that he didn't have to face the cold alone, that I saw how he watched me when he thought I wasn't looking, with a hunger that had nothing to do with ice or magic, that I felt the same pull, growing stronger with each passing day. But that night, everything changed. It began with the phoenix, his masterpiece, weeks in the making. As moonlight touched it, the ice bird spread its wings of frost and fire. But something was different. The magic felt wrong, wild, uncontrolled. More sculptures awakened, their movements jerky and aggressive. Ice spread from their feet, crawling across the ground like living frost, crackling as it grew. "No," Kale whispered, and the fear in his voice made my blood run cold. "It's happening again." The temperature plummeted. The windows frosted over in seconds, each ice crystal blooming like stop-motion flowers. The phoenix screamed, a sound like breaking glaciers, and ice exploded outward. I threw myself behind a workbench as shards filled the air, sharp enough to cut. "Celine," Kale's voice cut through the chaos. "You have to get out. Not without you." I fought my way to his side, ignoring the ice that bit at my exposed skin. Each breath burned in my lungs, and my tears froze before they could fall. "Tell me how to help." "You can't. The curse." "To hell with the curse." I grabbed his face between my hands. His skin burned with cold, but I held on. Frost immediately began spreading from where we touched, climbing my arms like delicate vines. "You're not alone anymore, Kale. Let me in." For a moment, the storm of ice and magic raged around us. Then his hands covered mine, and I felt something crack. Not ice, but the walls he'd built around his heart. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw fear there. Not of the magic, but of losing me. "The curse can only be broken by sacrifice," he said, his voice raw with emotion. A willing exchange of warmth for cold. "But Celine..." His thumbs brushed my cheeks, leaving trails of frost that tingled rather than burned. "I can't ask that of you." I understood then. All those years ago, he had given his warmth to his art, attempting to make it permanent. Now someone had to give their warmth to him, to make him human again. The choice was simple. "Take it," I whispered, leaning closer until our breath mingled in the frigid air. "Take my warmth. It could kill you." His voice broke on the last word. "Or it could save us both." The kiss was like touching winter itself, sharp, shocking, beautiful. I felt the cold rush into me as my warmth flowed into him. Ice crystals formed on my lashes, in my hair, on my skin. But underneath the cold, I felt his heart beginning to beat again, warm and human and alive. His lips softened against mine, and his arms pulled me closer, desperate and gentle all at once. The magic shifted, rebalanced. Around us, the savage ice sculptures stilled, their wild energy calming. The phoenix dissolved into gentle snowfall that sparkled like diamond dust in the moonlight. When we finally broke apart, I saw tears freezing on Kale's cheeks. But his eyes held warmth I had never seen before, and his skin no longer burned with cold. "You're freezing," he said, touching my face with hands that now felt wonderfully, humanly warm. I smiled, despite the cold that had settled in my bones. "Only a little. We'll have to share your warmth." And we did. The curse wasn't broken entirely. Magic never disappears completely, but it was transformed. Now Kale's sculptures come alive under moonlight with gentle grace, dancing through the winter nights before returning to sleep at dawn. And if the town's photographer sometimes seems to sparkle with frost in certain lights, if her photographs capture impossible moments of magic that shouldn't show up on film, well, magic always leaves its mark on those who embrace it. We learn to balance the warm and cold between us, like summer and winter meeting in an endless dance. His art still brings joy to the town, but now it comes from a place of love rather than loneliness. And on the coldest nights, when we watch his creations dance beneath the moon, I remember that some things are worth getting a little frozen for. Every morning, I wake to find frost patterns on our windows, his way of saying good morning, each one unique as a kiss. Every evening I catch him watching me with wonder, as if he still can't believe I chose to share his winter world. And every night, we create our own magic, warming each other's souls in ways that no curse could ever touch. They say love thaws the coldest hearts. But sometimes, love is learning to dance with the frost, to find beauty in the delicate balance between warm and cold, permanent and fleeting, mortal and magical. Sometimes love is choosing to stay even when the ice starts to creep in. I wouldn't have it any other way. I used to believe beauty was a shield that could protect me from life's cruelties. Standing before my vanity in my darkened bedroom, I traced the silvery scars that now decorated my face like scattered constellations. My fingers lingered over my right eye, permanently clouded, a constant reminder of the night that changed everything. I, Cardigan Matthews, once crowned the most beautiful woman in 3 states, could barely look at my own reflection. The doctors had done their best after the accident. "A miracle you survived," they'd said, as if that should comfort me when half my face lay in ruins. The same people who had once fawned over me now spoke in whispers, their pity more unbearable than their judgment. My modeling agency dropped me. My so-called friends stopped calling. Even my fiancé couldn't hide his relief when I broke off our engagement. The autumn wind whispered through the ancient trees of Moonhaven Village as I pulled my hood closer, shielding my face from curious glances. 6 months had passed since I'd fled here, leaving behind the glittering world of beauty pageants and social media fame. In this remote corner of the world, where mist clung to the mountains and legends still danced in the shadows, nobody knew my name or my story. I preferred it that way. The bell above the door chimed softly as I entered the local apothecary, seeking my monthly supply of healing salves. The shop always captured my imagination. Dried herbs hanging from rough-hewn beams, bottles of every shape and size catching the light like captured stars, and the perpetual scent of sage and sweetgrass dancing in the air. Ancient books lined the walls, their spines bearing titles in languages I couldn't read, and crystals hummed with a subtle energy I'd grown to recognize during my visits. Ah, the mysterious lady returns. The voice, warm and rich like honey over thunder, belonged to Arlo, the enigmatic shopkeeper. I'd never seen anyone quite like him, tall and lean, with silver-streaked black hair that seemed to move of its own accord, and eyes that shifted color like opals in sunlight. His clothes, though simple, held an otherworldly elegance that spoke of places beyond the ordinary world. "Just the usual," I mumbled, keeping my face turned away. But Arlo, as always, moved into my line of sight with the grace of a cat. Today his eyes swirled with flecks of amber and gold, reflecting the warm light of dozens of enchanted lanterns that floated near the ceiling. "The usual isn't working, is it?" he asked softly. "Those scars carry more than physical pain. They bear the weight of a life interrupted, of dreams shattered like the mirrors you've hidden away." Something in his voice made me look up, really look at him for the first time. His eyes had settled on a deep violet, and within them, I saw not pity, but understanding. My carefully constructed walls began to crack. "Nothing works," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I've tried everything. Creams, serums, experimental treatments, even meditation and crystal healing. Nothing can erase what happened that night." "Perhaps," Arlo said, moving to a wall of bottles that seemed to arrange themselves at his approach. "You're trying to erase the wrong thing." He selected a crystal vial filled with what looked like liquid moonlight, its contents swirling with colors I had no names for. "This isn't for your scars, Cardigan Matthews." I froze at the sound of my name. "How did you—" "I know many things," he interrupted gently. including the fact that what you seek isn't found in salves or potions. Your true healing lies in a journey, one I can help you take if you're brave enough. I should have been skeptical. I should have run. Instead, I found myself asking, what kind of journey? Arlo smiled, and the room seemed to brighten. The floating lanterns pulsed with increased warmth, and the crystals sang more clearly. A magical one, of course. Through realms where appearance means nothing, where truth shines brighter than any mirror, and where you might just find what you've lost, though it may not be what you think. You're talking about actual magic? Like spells and enchantments? I'm talking about truth, Cardigan. The deepest kind of magic there is. He extended his hand, the vial balanced delicately between his fingers. Are you interested? I stared at the swirling liquid, remembering the countless treatments and procedures I'd already tried. What's the catch? Only that you must trust me completely and be willing to see yourself as you truly are, not as others see you, or even as you see yourself now. The journey will be different for you than for anyone else who has taken it. Magic shapes itself to the soul that seeks it. Perhaps it was desperation, or maybe the hypnotic way the potion caught the light, but I found myself reaching for the vial. As my fingers brushed against his, a spark of electricity shot through my arm, and the liquid within the crystal container gleamed with my reflected face, whole and unscarred, yet somehow different from my former beauty. When do we start? I asked, my heart racing with possibility. We already have. Arlo's smile turned mysterious as he gestured toward the back of the shop. The beaded curtain parted of its own accord, revealing a doorway that hadn't been there before. Beyond it lay not the expected storage room, but a path winding through a forest bathed in ethereal blue light. Ancient trees stretched toward a sky filled with unfamiliar stars, their branches intertwining to form natural archways overhead. My heart jumped into my throat. Right now? Magic waits for no one, my dear. He offered his arm, and I noticed intricate patterns shifting beneath the surface of his skin, like living tattoos made of starlight. Shall we? Taking a deep breath, I slipped my hand into the crook of his elbow. As we stepped through the doorway, the familiar scents of the apothecary faded, replaced by the crisp sweetness of night-blooming jasmine and something else, something wild and ancient that made my skin tingle. The forest around us pulsed with life. Tiny lights, like earthbound stars, floated between the trees. The ground beneath our feet was carpeted with moss that glowed with each step, creating patterns that spread outward like ripples in a pond. Flowers I had never seen before bloomed in our wake, their petals transparent as glass, but stronger than steel. Welcome to the Twilight Realm, Arlo said, his voice barely above a whisper. Here, things are not always what they seem, and seeming is not always what is true. This is one of the many spaces between spaces, where magic flows more freely than water, and transformation is as natural as breathing. As if to demonstrate his point, a nearby bush suddenly transformed into a cluster of butterflies, their wings shimmering with impossible colors, before they dissolved into mist. The mist reformed into delicate crystal chimes that played melodies I felt in my bones, rather than heard with my ears. Why are you helping me? I asked, clutching his arm tighter as we followed the winding path deeper into the magical forest. What could you possibly gain from this? Because everyone deserves to see their own light, he replied, helping me over a stream that flowed upward instead of down, its waters carrying memories that flickered like fish beneath the surface. Even those who think it's been extinguished. Besides, you're not the first to seek transformation here, nor will you be the last. There have been others, many, though each journey is unique to the seeker. His expression darkened momentarily. Some find what they're looking for. Others, well, Let's say that not everyone is ready for the truth magic reveals. We walked in comfortable silence until we reached a clearing. In its center stood an ancient tree, its trunk twisted into the shape of a doorway. Through it, I could see what looked like my own reflection, but something was different, deeper, more real than any mirror I'd ever looked into. The mirror of truth, Arlo explained. It shows not what you are, but what you believe yourself to be. Every person who steps before it sees something different, something that speaks to their deepest beliefs about themselves. I approached cautiously. The reflection that greeted me was grotesque. My scars appeared deeper, darker, like canyons carved into my flesh. My blind eye was a pit of darkness that seemed to swallow light, and shadows writhed across my skin like living things. "This is how you see yourself," Arlo said quietly, standing behind me. "But it's not what I see." "What do you see?" I whispered, unable to look away from the horrible image. Instead of answering, he stepped closer, his chest barely touching my back. His hands came to rest lightly on my shoulders, and suddenly the reflection began to change. The scars softened, becoming silver threads that caught the light like strands of precious metal. My blind eye transformed into a pool of swirling colors, like a galaxy contained within an iris. The shadows retreated, replaced by a gentle luminescence that seemed to emanate from within. "I see strength," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "I see someone who has endured pain, but hasn't let it break her. I see beauty that runs far deeper than skin, beauty that transforms rather than fades." Tears slid down my cheeks as the reflection continued to shift, showing me moments from my past. Not the pageant wins or modeling shots, but times I'd shown kindness to others, moments of genuine laughter, instances of courage I'd forgotten. I saw myself comforting a fellow contestant who'd lost a competition, teaching young girls about self-confidence, volunteering at shelters even when cameras weren't around. "The first step to healing," Arlo said, turning me gently to face him, "is understanding that your worth was never in your face. It was always in your heart, your spirit, your capacity for kindness and growth." Looking into his eyes, which had turned a soft gold in the magical light, I felt something shift inside me, like a key opening a lock I hadn't known existed. The world around us seemed to pulse in response, the magical energies of the realm dancing more vibrantly. Our magical journey continued through landscapes that defied description. We crossed a bridge made of woven moonbeams, where each step created ripples of light that spread out into the starlit void below. We visited a garden where flowers sang lullabies in ancient languages, their petals changing color with each note. In a crystal cave that amplified thoughts into visible shapes, Arlo taught me to craft simple spells. "Magic," he explained, guiding my hands through the motions, "is simply the art of seeing possibility where others see limitation. It's about understanding that everything, every person, every object, every moment, contains multiple truths, multiple potentials." As days blended into weeks, I found myself looking forward to our lessons, not just for the magic, but for Arlo's presence. He had a way of making me forget my scars, of helping me see beauty in unexpected places. When he looked at me, I felt whole again, not because he ignored my injuries, but because he helped me see how they had transformed rather than destroyed me. But it wasn't all enchantment and wonder. One evening, as we rested beside a pool of singing water, its surface reflecting impossible constellations, a shadow fell over our sanctuary. The temperature dropped, and the magical lights flickering around us dimmed to barely visible embers. "What do we have here?" a voice like crackling frost said. "Teaching another student, dear brother?" Arlo stiffened beside me. "Marlowe." A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman with Arlo's high cheekbones and shifting eyes, but where his features held warmth, hers were sharp with cruel intention. Her hair moved like living shadows, and her gown seemed made of crystallized darkness. "Don't you remember what happened to your last student?" Marlo's gaze fixed on me, and I felt my scars begin to burn. "How many more must you break before you learn?" "That was your doing, not mine," Arlo said, his voice hard as he stepped between us. Power radiated from him now, making the air thick with potential. "I merely showed her the truth, that magic always comes with a price." Marlo smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible. "Shall I show this one too? Shall I reveal what really happens to those who seek transformation without being worthy of it?" Before either of us could react, she flung out her hand. Dark energy crackled through the air toward me, promising to strip away not just the progress I'd made, but everything I was. Without thinking, I raised my own hands, remembering Arlo's lessons about possibility and limitation, about multiple truths existing simultaneously. The darkness hit what felt like an invisible wall before me, fragmenting into thousands of tiny butterflies that dissolved into starlight. Both Marlo and Arlo stared at me in shock. "Impossible," Marlo whispered. "You're just a human." But I understood then what Arlo had been trying to teach me all along. "No," I said, standing taller. "I'm someone who finally sees herself clearly. Someone who understands that scars can be strength, that broken things can be beautiful, that transformation doesn't mean erasing what was, but building something new from it." Power flowed through me, not dark like Marlo's, but bright and warm like sunlight on water. The scars on my face tingled, and I watched in amazement as they transformed into streams of light that danced around me like cosmic ribbons. My blind eye, rather than being a weakness, had become a window to seeing magic itself. "You see, sister," Arlo said softly. "True magic isn't about power or price. It's about transformation. Not of the body, but of the heart. Not about becoming something different, but about revealing what was always there." Marlo's form began to waver. "This isn't over," she hissed before dissolving into shadow. "Some truths are too harsh for love to overcome." In the silence that followed, Arlo turned to me with wonder in his color-changing eyes. "In all my years of teaching, I've never seen anyone channel pure light like that. You didn't just resist her darkness, you transformed it." "I had a good teacher," I said, stepping closer to him. "One who taught me that what we think of as flaws can become our greatest strength." Arlo reached out, tracing the now luminous lines on my face with gentle fingers. "Your scars," he murmured. "They've become channels for your magic. The very things you thought broke you have made you more powerful than you could imagine." "Is that possible?" "With you, I'm beginning to believe anything is." His hand cupped my cheek, and I leaned into his touch. "You've transformed more than just yourself, Cardigan. You've reminded me why I fell in love with magic in the first place, because it shows us the truth about ourselves, if we're brave enough to see it." Looking into his eyes, which had turned the deep blue of twilight, I saw my reflection again, not as I had been, or even as I was now, but as something entirely new. A woman who had walked through fire and emerged not undamaged, but stronger. Someone who had learned that real magic isn't about changing how you look, but about changing how you see. "And what about love itself?" I asked softly, feeling the magic pulse between us like a shared heartbeat. His answer was a kiss that tasted of starlight and possibility, of magic and truth, of endings and beginnings all wrapped into one moment of perfect understanding. The realm around us responded, erupting in a display of light and color that reflected the joy in our hearts. When we finally parted, the magical realm around us had transformed. The trees sparkled with thousands of tiny lights, and the air was filled with floating flowers that emitted soft, musical chimes as they drifted past. Even Marlowe's lingering shadows had been transformed into gentle twilight, proving that even darkness had its place in the balance of things. "The realm responds to joy," Arlo explained, smiling. "And truth. What truth is that?" "That sometimes the most powerful magic of all is simply allowing yourself to be loved exactly as you are. That beauty isn't about perfection. It's about authenticity. About embracing all of yourself, even the parts you once thought were broken." Hand in hand, we walked back toward the door to his shop, but I knew I wouldn't be using it to run away anymore. I had found something far more valuable than the perfect face I'd lost. I had found myself, and in doing so, found love that saw beneath the surface to the magic that had been there all along. The scars remained, but now they shimmered with an inner light that matched the magic I'd discovered within myself. My blind eye, once a source of shame, had become a window to seeing things others missed, the subtle magics that danced at the edges of the ordinary world. Each morning, when I looked in the mirror, I saw not the beauty queen I'd once been, but something far more precious. A woman who had learned to see her own worth. Arlo transformed his shop into a sanctuary for others like me, people seeking not just physical healing, but spiritual transformation. Together we helped them discover their own inner magic, teaching them that true beauty flows from accepting all parts of oneself, even the broken ones. Marlowe's shadows never fully disappeared, but they served as a reminder that even darkness has its purpose in teaching us to appreciate the light. As I stood in our magical realm, watching new seekers discover their own power, I realized that some accidents aren't accidents at all, but doorways to destiny. My scars had led me here, to this love, to this purpose, to this understanding that true beauty isn't about being flawless. It's about being fearlessly, authentically yourself. "Ready for your next lesson?" Arlo asked, his eyes twinkling with mischief and love as he pulled me close. The magical lights around us danced in response to our joy, creating patterns of light and shadow that told their own stories of transformation. I smiled, feeling the magic pulse beneath my skin like a second heartbeat, my scars glowing with inner starlight. "With you. Always." And so our story continued, not as a tale of lost beauty regained, but as something far more magical, a journey of discovering that sometimes the most beautiful things in life are born from our deepest wounds, and that true love sees not with the eyes, but with the heart. My fingers danced across the ancient wood of my grandmother's loom, feeling the familiar warmth pulse beneath my touch. Each thread I wove carried whispers of emotion, memories of joy and sorrow braided together in an intricate dance. The villagers called it magic, but to me, it was simply the language my heart spoke through silk and wool. Generation after generation of women in my family had sat at this very loom, weaving not just fabric, but hopes and dreams into every piece they created. The morning light filtered through my shop's dusty windows, casting golden rays across the countless fabrics that adorned my walls. Each piece told a story, a shawl that brought comfort to a grieving widow, its threads woven with gentle understanding and peace. A blanket that wrapped newborns in their first moments of life, imbued with dreams of bright futures. A scarf that gave courage to a child facing their fears, strengthened with threads of bravery and confidence. I paused my weaving to adjust a loose thread, admiring how the sunlight caught the iridescent fibers. The bell above my shop door chimed, and I looked up to find a tall figure casting a long shadow across my workspace. His fine clothes and jeweled rings marked him as someone of importance, but it was his eyes that caught my attention. Deep violet and unnaturally bright, like twilight trapped in crystal. "Mistress Lark," he said, his voice as smooth as polished marble. "I am Drivik, a collector of rare and beautiful things. Your reputation precedes you." His gaze swept across my workshop, lingering on each piece with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Something in his tone made my fingers tighten around my shuttle, but I pushed the unease aside. After all, wealthy patrons often sought out my work. "Welcome to my shop. How may I help you?" He moved closer, examining the tapestry taking shape on my loom, a wedding gift I was creating for a local couple, threaded with love and loyalty. His presence felt like a storm cloud blocking the sun, and I noticed the roses I kept in a vase by the window wilting slightly as he passed. Such extraordinary work. The way you capture emotion in the thread. It's unlike anything I've seen. His fingers hovered over the fabric, not quite touching. "I would very much like to commission a piece." I should have listened to my instincts that day. Should have noticed how his shadow seemed to move independently of his body, how the plants near my window drooped in his presence, how my loom's usual warm hum turned discordant when he drew near. But his words were honey-sweet, and his gold was real enough. When he asked to see my technique up close, I didn't hesitate to demonstrate. That was my mistake. The last thing I remembered was his violet eyes blazing with triumph before darkness claimed me. I awoke in a cold stone room, my beloved loom mockingly familiar beside a barred window. Beyond the glass, mountains I didn't recognize clawed at a steel-gray sky. My heart ached for my small village, for the comfort of my shop, for the simple life I'd taken for granted. Days blurred together, as Drivik forced me to weave dark magic into the fabric. My tears fell silently onto threads that once brought joy, now twisted into instruments of fear and control. Each tapestry I created under his command felt like a betrayal of everything my gift stood for. He sold these corrupted pieces to lords and kings, spreading discord and darkness across the land. But even in my darkest moments, I kept one small act of defiance. Into every piece, I wove a thread of hope, a silent cry for help that I prayed someone would hear. These threads of light were so subtle that Drivik never noticed them, too focused on the dark magic he demanded. Each night, as I fell into exhausted sleep, I whispered a prayer that someone would understand my message and would feel the hope buried beneath the darkness. Miles away, in a village nestled between rolling hills, my prayer found its answer most unexpectedly. Finn Alden wiped the sweat from his brow, the heat of his forge painting his skin in warm oranges and reds. His calloused hands, strong enough to bend metal to his will, gently lifted a scarf from his workbench. My scarf, though he didn't know it yet. He'd found it in a traveling merchant's cart, drawn to it for reasons he couldn't explain. The merchant had acquired it from someone who'd purchased one of my forced creations, but had sensed the darkness within it. Yet beneath that darkness, Finn felt something else, a whisper of hope, a cry for help. That night, as he slept with the scarf nearby, my magic reached out to him through dreams. He saw my face, tear-stained but determined, my hands moving across the loom in desperate patterns. He felt my fear, my hope, my silent plea for salvation. The connection between us, forged through that single thread of defiant hope, grew stronger with each passing night. The dreams continued, each one revealing more. Fragments of my journey, glimpses of Dreivik's fortress, the mountain peaks that imprisoned me. Finn's heart, pure and true, responded to my magic in ways I never imagined possible. His soul recognized mine across the distance, two hearts calling out to one another through the darkness. He began his journey at first light, guided only by the pull of my enchanted weaving and his unwavering determination. The village thought him mad, chasing dreams of a woman he'd never met, but Finn knew the truth in his heart. Each night as he traveled, the dreams grew stronger, our connection deeper. For weeks he traveled, following the thread of magic that connected us. He scaled treacherous peaks, crossed raging rivers, and navigated dense forests. The scarf led him true, its magic growing stronger as he drew closer to Dravik's domain. Along the way, he gathered stories of dark magic spreading through the kingdoms, of nobles transformed by mysterious tapestries, and his resolve only grew stronger. When our eyes finally met through the bars of my prison, something shifted in the very fabric of reality. Finn's gaze held mine, green as summer leaves and deep as ancient forests, filled with a recognition that transcended our physical meeting. "I've been dreaming of you," he whispered, his rough-hewn hands reaching through the bars to touch mine. The moment our fingers met, warmth flooded through me, chasing away the cold that had settled in my bones during my captivity. "And I've been weaving dreams of you," I replied, my heart thundering in my chest. His touch felt like coming home, like finding a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. At that moment, I understood why my grandmother had always said that the strongest magic comes from love. Together, we formulated a plan. Finn's knowledge of metalwork proved invaluable. He understood the nature of binding and breaking in ways that complemented my own gifts perfectly. He taught me about the weak points in metal, and I showed him how similar principles applied to magical bindings. While Draivik slept, we worked to unravel the dark enchantments he had forced me to create, weakening his power thread by thread. Each night, as we worked together, our connection grew stronger. Finn would tell me stories of his village, of the people he'd helped with his craft, and I found myself falling deeper in love with his gentle heart and unwavering courage. His hands, strong enough to shape metal, would tenderly brush away my tears when memories of the dark magic overwhelmed me. But Draivik was no fool. He sensed the changing tide of magic in his fortress and felt his power weakening as we undid my corrupted creations. On the night we planned to escape, he confronted us in my prison chamber, his violet eyes blazing with fury. "You dare to undo my work," he snarled, dark energy crackling around him like lightning. The shadows in the room writhed and twisted, responding to his rage. What followed was chaos incarnate. Finn moved with the grace of a practiced warrior, his blacksmith strength meeting Draivik's magic head-on. I worked frantically at my loom, weaving counterspells into existence, attempting to protect us both from Draivik's increasingly desperate attacks. Each thread I wove shimmered with the power of our combined love and determination. Then came the moment that nearly shattered my world. Draivik, realizing he was losing control, summoned a blade of pure darkness. It arced through the air toward me, a deadly shadow aimed at my heart. But Finn, brave, beautiful Finn, threw himself in its path. The blade struck true, and he crumpled to the floor, his blood staining the stones beneath my loom. Time seemed to stop. In that frozen moment, I saw everything with perfect clarity. My hands moved of their own accord, selecting threads of pure gold and silver, weaving with a speed and precision I'd never known before. Into that final tapestry, I poured everything. My love for Finn, my defiance of Draivik, my grandmother's teachings, and the pure, untainted magic that had been passed down through generations of my family. The magic built like a wave, each pass of the shuttle adding to its power. Love, pure and true, flowed through my fingers into the threads. I wove our shared dreams, our hopes for the future, the strength of our connection. As I wove the final thread, the tapestry blazed with light so bright it turned night to day. Draivik screamed as the magic consumed him, his form dissolving into nothing more than scattered threads that vanished into the air. The light enveloped Finn's still form, lifting him gently from the floor. I watched in wonder as his wound closed, color returning to his face. When his eyes fluttered open, they found mine immediately, filled with love and understanding. "I knew I'd find you," he whispered, reaching up to cup my cheek. From the first dream, I knew my heart belonged to you. My loom gave one final pulse of warmth before falling silent, its ancient magic spent. But as Finn's arms encircled me, I realized that some forms of magic don't require enchanted looms or mystical threads. They exist in the spaces between heartbeats, in the quiet moments of trust, in the courage to fight for what's right. We returned to my village together, where my shop still stood waiting. The loom now sits in its familiar corner, creating beautiful but ordinary fabrics. Yet every piece I weave still tells a story, our story, of love that transcends magic, of courage born from compassion, and of two hearts bound together by threads stronger than any enchantment. Finn's forge stands next door to my shop now, and the sound of his hammer rings in harmony with the rhythm of my shuttle. Our crafts complement each other perfectly, his strength and precision matching my creativity and intuition. The villagers say we've brought new life to the community, our love spreading warmth and joy just as surely as my magical creations once did. Each evening, as the sun sets and the day's work ends, we sit together in the garden we've planted. Sometimes he holds me close and tells me about the dreams that led him to me, his voice full of wonder even after all this time. Sometimes I weave simple patterns while he works nearby, our comfortable silence worth more than any magical creation. And sometimes, when the light hits just right, I catch glimpses of magic in the ordinary moments, in the way his smile still makes my heart skip, in how perfectly our hands fit together, in the dreams we continue to weave into reality. The legends of my magical loom have faded into stories now, whispered around firesides on winter nights. But I've discovered that the greatest magic of all lies in the simple act of loving and being loved in return. It's in the way Finn's hand finds mine in the dark, in the sound of his laughter mixing with mine. In the future we're creating together, a tapestry more beautiful than any I could have imagined. As I close my eyes each night, safe in Finn's embrace, I thank whatever fate or fortune brought us together. Our love story may not have begun like a fairy tale, but it has given me something far more precious than magic. It has given me home. In the end, I've learned that true love is the strongest magic of all, weaving hearts together in patterns that last forever. The creak of old wooden floorboards beneath my boots echoed through the empty hallway as I made my morning rounds. 3 weeks after Daddy's funeral, his cologne still lingered in the study, sandalwood and leather mingling with the musty scent of his leather-bound ledgers. I traced my fingers along the smooth mahogany desk, remembering how he'd sit here every evening, recording the day's business in his precise handwriting. The first rays of dawn filtered through the gauzy curtains, casting honeyed shadows across the room. Outside, a whippoorwill called its morning song, accompanied by the distant lowing of cattle. The Callaway Ranch was waking up, and I needed to be ready. I stepped onto the wraparound porch, the worn planks still cool from the night air. The morning spread before me like spun sugar, the sky streaked with ribbons of rose gold and lavender. Mesquite and creosote scented the air, mixing with the sweet perfume of the wild mountain laurel that grew along the fence line. My father's voice echoed in my memory. "This land's got sugar in its soil and honey in its heart, Savannah girl." The rumble of approaching hoofbeats drew my attention. Through the morning mist, a rider emerged, the leather of his saddle creaking with each step of his chocolate-colored stallion. His black Stetson was pulled low, but I caught the glint of eyes sharp as a hawk's watching me. The horse's coat gleamed like polished copper in the early light, its muscles rippling beneath as they came to a stop. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying the rough texture of someone who'd spent long nights around campfires. He dismounted with fluid grace, boots stirring up small clouds of dust. "Name's Beau McCade. Word in town is you're looking for help." The breeze carried his scent, leather and sage, mixed with something uniquely male that made my pulse quicken. Up close, I could see the stories written in his face. Laugh lines around his eyes, a small scar above his right eyebrow, and a 5 o'clock shadow that somehow looked deliberate rather than neglected. References, I managed, proud that my voice remained steady despite the flutter in my stomach. He reached into his weathered leather vest, pulling out several folded papers. They were crisp despite their obvious age, speaking of a man who valued what little he carried. The references were impeccable. 3 years at the King Ranch, 2 at the Y Bar, glowing praise from both. The next few weeks passed in a blur of shared work and growing tension. Every morning, I'd watch from my bedroom window as Beau worked with the horses in the pre-dawn light. His movements were poetry, gentle but firm, speaking a language of touch and pressure that the animals understood instinctively. The sight of him, silhouetted against the rising sun, stirred something deep inside me that I wasn't ready to name. We settled into a rhythm, our days marked by the sun's arc across the endless Texas sky. Mornings meant checking fence lines together, our horses walking close enough that our boots sometimes brushed. Afternoons brought cattle counts and repair work, Beau's capable hands making quick work of broken gates and loose boards. His fingers would occasionally brush mine as we worked, sending electricity shooting up my arm. The first time I saw him truly smile was during a sudden afternoon cloudburst. We were mending a fence in the north pasture when the sky opened up. The rain came down in sheets, turning the dirt to slick clay beneath our boots. I slipped, and his arms were around me before I could fall, strong and sure. Thunder rolled overhead as we stood there, rain plastering our clothes to our skin, and his laugh was rich as bitter chocolate. "You're something else, Savannah Calloway," he said, raindrops clinging to his eyelashes. That's when I noticed the flecks of gold in his green eyes, like sunlight through spring leaves. Our peaceful routine was shattered one brutal morning. The air was thick with the metallic stench of blood as we found 2 of our prize bulls dead in the north pasture. The morning sun illuminated the brutal scene. Clean shots through the heart. Professional work. My stomach churned at the sight, but anger burned hotter than the nausea. Tucker Reynolds' threat came 2 days later, delivered by one of his ranch hands. The young man's boots left muddy tracks on my clean porch boards as he handed over an envelope containing an offer well below market value. The paper was heavy and expensive, like Tucker himself, trying to dress up something ugly in refined clothing. The night we set our trap, the air hung thick and still, heavy with the promise of rain. Beau and I waited in the shadows of the barn, close enough that I could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing. His hand found mine in the darkness, calloused fingers intertwining with mine like puzzle pieces clicking into place. When Tucker's men came, the sound of their horses shattered the cricket song. Lantern light swept across the property like searching fingers. The confrontation exploded in a chaos of shouts and gunfire, the muzzle flashes brilliant against the night sky. The sharp crack of rifles mixed with the panicked sounds of horses, and the acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. The aftermath brought the scent of rain and justice. Tucker and his men were led away in handcuffs, their boots leaving scuffs in the mud. The sheriff's investigation uncovered a paper trail leading back to months of sabotage, cut fence lines, scattered cattle, and poisoned water sources. Tucker's empire crumbled like a sandcastle in a storm. Standing in the aftermath, watching the sunrise paint the world in shades of hope, I felt Beau's presence before I heard him approach. The gravel crunched beneath his boots as he walked toward me, his spurs chiming softly with each step. "Guess you won't be needing a hired hand anymore," he said softly, his voice carrying notes of resignation and something else, something that sounded like longing. I turned to face him, taking in every detail. The way the rising sun caught the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. The small scar above his eyebrow that I now knew came from a spooked horse when he was 12. The softness in his eyes that he showed only to me. "I think I need more than a hired hand," I said, my heart thundering against my ribs. "I need a partner." When he kissed me, it was like every sweet thing I'd ever tasted distilled into a single moment. His lips were soft despite their weathered appearance, and his hands, when they cupped my face, were infinitely gentle despite their strength. 2 years have passed since that morning. The ranch has flourished under our combined care, the land responding to our shared love like a garden tended by devoted hands. We've expanded thoughtfully, adding a horse breeding program that's already gaining a reputation across 3 states. The riding school we started brings the sound of children's laughter to the property every weekend. Every evening, Beau and I sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that remind me of my father's stories about magic and sweet dreams. The coffee in our cups steams in the cooling air, and sometimes Beau tells me stories about the homes he passed through as a child. But now, when he talks about finding his own magical kingdom, he's not chasing a childhood dream anymore. He's describing the life we've built together on this sugar-blessed soil, where every morning brings new adventures, and every evening ends with the sweetness of coming home to each other. As I fall asleep each night, wrapped in Beau's strong arms, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and sage that clings to his skin, I understand what Daddy meant about the land having honey in its heart. The sweetness isn't in the soil, it's in the love that grows here, in the dreams that take root and flourish, in the magic of finding exactly what you need exactly when you need it. And sometimes, in the quiet moments before dawn, when the world is painted in shades of silver and shadow, I think about that first morning when a mysterious cowboy rode up my driveway. How could I have known then that he carried not just the skills I needed to save my ranch, but also the heart I needed to make it truly a home? They say the sweetest dreams come just before waking, but I've found that the real sweetness lies in building a life so good you never want to wake up from it at all. The night ocean breathed in endless whispers, each wave carrying secrets to shore. I stood at my bedroom window, wrapped in the thick summer air, when I first saw the impossible light. It wasn't the familiar silver path of moonlight on the water. This glow pulsed beneath the surface in shades of electric blue and ethereal green, moving with deliberate purpose against the tide. The sight drew me from my bed, my bare feet silent on the weather-worn steps of the beach house. Salt-laden air clung to my skin as I descended to the shore, my cotton nightdress offering little protection against the humid night. The sand felt like warm velvet between my toes, and it still held the day's heat beneath its cooled surface. As I approached the water's edge, the mysterious light intensified. What I'd first taken for bioluminescent algae resolved into distinct points of radiance, each one moving independently like underwater fireflies. They wove intricate patterns beneath the surface, forming a glowing pathway that stretched toward the horizon. The gentle surf kissed my ankles, unexpectedly warm for a night ocean. Each wave carried more of the living lights, their blue-green glow reflecting off my skin until I shimmered. The rational part of my mind, the part that had helped me survive the past year of grief and change, urged caution. But something deeper called to me, an ancient recognition that bypassed thought entirely. I waded deeper, letting the water rise past my knees. My nightdress floated around my thighs, becoming nearly transparent in the otherworldly light. Glowing creatures swirled around me, their touch like pinpricks of electricity against my skin. They seemed to be leading me toward something, or someone. He appeared like a mirage made solid, standing on a sandbar that I knew hadn't existed during my afternoon walks on the beach. The mysterious light circled him in lazy spirals, illuminating features that belonged in a Renaissance painting. Dark hair fell in waves to his shoulders, framing a face of impossible beauty. But it was his eyes that held me motionless. They contained the same phosphorescent glow as the creatures in the water, ancient and knowing and touched with inexpressible sorrow. "You see them clearly." His voice carried across the water like distant thunder, deep and resonant. Most mortals perceive only a vague glow, if anything at all. What are they? I continued forward, drawn by a pull I couldn't explain. The water was chest deep now, but the sandbar rose to meet me, solid beneath my feet. The last echoes of what once was. He held out his hand, and several of the lights danced up to spiral around his fingers. My final companions in exile. I'm Kala, I offered, mesmerized by the play of light across his features. Up close, his skin was translucent, like sunlight through sea glass. Adrian. A smile touched his lips, sad but genuine. Though centuries ago, I was called by another name, one your tongue couldn't shape without breaking. The lights pulsed brighter at his words, their glow reflecting off the water droplets in the air until we stood in a sphere of living light. You're not human, I said, the words falling from my lips like stones into still water. No. His smile faded. I am a spirit of these waters, though much diminished from what I once was. Pride and ancient magic bound me to this place, neither fully present nor truly gone. I recognized the ache in his voice. It echoed my own isolation since moving to this small coastal town after my mother's death. My father had retreated into his work, leaving me to navigate my grief alone in a place where every face was a stranger's. How long have you been here? Longer than this shore has held its current shape. Adrian turned and gazed at the horizon, where the full moon hung low and heavy. The curse that binds me is as old as the first tide. These lights, these fragments of my original form, are all that remain of my power. Without conscious thought, I reached out to touch his arm. His skin felt cool and solid, yet somehow fluid. Are you in pain? He looked down at my hand. Physical pain, no, but watching my essence fade with each passing tide. He let the sentence hang unfinished in the salty air. Will you tell me about it? About who you were? The words surprised me even as I spoke them. Adrian studied me for a long moment, his luminous eyes searching my face. You should return to shore, Kala. The tide is rising, and these waters hold dangers you can't imagine. I'm not afraid. The statement came out stronger than I intended, and his expression softened. Perhaps you should be. He stepped back, and the lights swirled around him like a living cloak. But if you wish to hear my story, return tomorrow night. The choice must be yours. I did return, night after night, drawn by something deeper than curiosity. Adrian taught me the language of the tides and showed me how to read the stories written in the movement of waves. His voice painted pictures of crystal cities beneath the sea, of magic that once flowed as freely as water itself, of a time when the boundary between our worlds was as permeable as morning mist. In return, I shared my own story, of the mother who had filled my childhood with art and music before cancer stole her away, of the father who couldn't bear to look at me because I had her eyes, of the loneliness that had followed me from our city apartment to this quiet beach house. Adrian listened with an intensity that made me feel truly seen for the first time since my mother's death. Time moved differently during our midnight meetings. Sometimes we would sit in comfortable silence, watching the bioluminescent creatures dance beneath the surface. Other nights, Adrian would sing in a language that made my heart ache with its beauty, though I couldn't understand the words. The lights would respond to his voice, creating patterns that told stories of their own. I didn't realize I was falling in love until it was too late. It happened gradually, like the tide coming in, each small moment bringing me deeper until I was surrounded. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle power in his voice when he spoke of ancient magic, the careful way he maintained physical distance between us, even as our emotional connection grew stronger. But something was changing. With each passing night, the sandbar seemed smaller, the water deeper. The bioluminescent creatures, once brilliant enough to illuminate the waves for yards around, began to dim. Adrian's form became less substantial, as if he too were fading with his magic. "Please," I begged one night, as another full moon witnessed our meeting. "Tell me how to help you. There must be a way to break the curse." Pain flickered across his features. "There is a way," he admitted, "but knowing it will only bring you grief." "Tell me anyway." I moved closer, close enough to see the play of light beneath his skin. The curse was designed as both punishment and temptation. His voice dropped to match the whisper of the waves. "If I fall in love with a mortal, truly, completely, without reservation, the magic binding me here will shatter. But when it does, this sandbar will collapse, dragging into the depths anyone caught in its destruction. I would return to the sea, but any mortal..." He couldn't finish the sentence. The cruel elegance of the curse struck me like a physical blow. It wasn't just meant to bind him. It was designed to ensure that any chance at love would end in tragedy. "That's why you've kept your distance." Understanding washed over me with the force of a wave. Why I never let myself love you as I wanted to." His hand hovered near my cheek, not quite touching. "Yes, I would rather fade to nothing than cause your death." But his earlier stories had sparked an idea. "You told me humans once crossed between our worlds freely, that the boundary was thinner." "In ancient times, yes, but that knowledge has been lost to the ages." "Then we'll rediscover it." Determination filled me, pushing back against my despair. "You've taught me so much about your world. There must be a way for me to survive in it." "Kala..." "No." I cut him off. "I refuse to accept that our only options are watching you fade or dying together. There's always another path. You just have to be brave enough to seek it." The lights around us pulsed brighter, as if responding to my conviction. Adrian studied me with an intensity that peered into my soul. Finally, he spoke. "There are legends, tales of mortals who learn to breathe water, to adapt to life beneath the waves. But the process is dangerous, and the price of failure is death. Tell me what I need to do." Over the next week, Adrian shared everything he knew about the old magic. We discovered that the bioluminescent creatures weren't simply remnants of his power. They were keys to transformation. Their light contained the essence of his world, and with proper preparation, they could change a mortal's nature. The ritual required precise timing, midnight during the new moon when the barrier between worlds was thinnest. I would need to drink a mixture of seawater and the creature's essence, then fully submerge in the ocean. If successful, my body would adapt to life underwater. If not... The night of the new moon arrived too quickly, and not quickly enough. The sandbar had shrunk to a fraction of its original size, and Adrian's form was so transparent that starlight shone through him. "Are you certain?" he asked one final time, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Once begun, there's no turning back. I've never been more certain of anything." I took his hand, feeling the cool liquid substance of his skin against mine. "I'm not letting you face eternity alone." He pulled me close, and for the first time, pressed his lips to mine. The kiss tasted of salt and magic and possibility, of ancient depths and new beginnings. When we parted, the lights around us blazed brighter than I'd seen in weeks. "The curse will still break when I fully embrace my love for you," he warned. "The sandbar will still collapse. Then we'd better be ready to swim." I smiled, attempting to project more confidence than I felt. The mixture of seawater and essence glowed like liquid starlight in the shell Adrian had prepared. It smelled of ocean depths and ancient magic, of hope and transformation. The taste defied description, like drinking moonlight and darkness and dreams all at once. Heat spread through my body like lightning through water, making each breath a struggle. Adrian steadied me as I swayed, his touch growing more solid as the magic took effect. "Ready?" I nodded, unable to speak through the burning in my throat. Together, we walked to the edge of the sandbar. The water below was black in the moonless night, but I could see the bioluminescent creatures gathering in unprecedented numbers, their light turning the depths into a galaxy of blue-green stars. "I love you," Adrian whispered, and I felt the sandbar begin to crumble beneath our feet. "I love you too." The words escaped as we fell. The water closed over my head, cold and dark and terrifying. For an eternal moment, panic seized me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't tell up from down. Then Adrian's arms were around me, and the burning in my throat transformed into something miraculous. My lungs adapted, drawing oxygen from the water as naturally as air. I opened my eyes to a world of wonder. The bioluminescent creatures swirled around us in a triumphant dance, their light revealing an underwater landscape I'd never imagined. Adrian's true form was magnificent, his human appearance giving way to something both beautiful and strange, with scales that shimmered like opals and eyes that held all the mystery of the deep. He was solid now, fully restored, no longer bound by the curse that had held him for so long. And I was transformed. Not exactly like him, but no longer fully human either. Something in between, capable of living in both worlds. We rose through the water together, breaking the surface to find the sandbar completely gone. The beach looked different from this perspective, distant and dreamlike as if it belonged to another life entirely. "What now?" I asked, discovering I could speak normally despite the changes. Adrian smiled, and the ocean lit up around us. "Now we explore. There are wonders in this world you've never dreamed of, and I want to show you all of them." Hand in hand, we dove beneath the waves, leaving the shore behind. The bioluminescent creatures led the way, their light guiding us toward new adventures and possibilities. I had chosen love over safety, magic over the familiar, and in doing so, found a way to have both. The curse was broken, but the real magic was just beginning. Ahead lay a lifetime of discovering the mysteries of the deep, of learning to navigate between two worlds, of building a love that defied the boundaries of nature itself. Each day would bring new wonders, and each night new adventures, as we explored the endless expanse of a life lived between sea and shore, between magic and mortality, between what was and what could be. The first time I saw Grace and Bellamy's shop, I nearly walked past it. Nestled between a modern patisserie and a tourist trap cafe on one of the Marais' twisting streets, the narrow storefront seemed to exist in its own pocket of time. A small brass plaque reading simply, "Bellamy Horlogerie," hung beside a door of age-darkened wood, while the display window held just 3 antique clocks, each more exquisite than the last. I paused, my fingers closing around my mother's pocket watch in my coat pocket. The curved silver case had grown warm against my palm during the long walk across Paris, as if it sensed its homecoming was near. For 3 months since her funeral, I'd kept the watch close, unable to open its stuck cover, unwilling to part with it even for repair. But I couldn't bear the silence of its stopped mechanism any longer. The bell above the door chimed softly when I entered, a gentle counterpoint to the symphony of ticking that filled the shop. Timepieces of every description lined the walls. Tall grandfather clocks with ornate faces, delicate carriage clocks under glass domes, sturdy maritime chronometers that once guided ships across vast oceans. The air smelled of polish and metal, and time itself. May I help you?" The voice came from the back of the shop, low and melodious, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't place. A man stepped into view, and I felt a strange flutter in my chest. Grayson Bellamy was not what I'd expected. I'd imagined someone ancient, hunched over watchmaker's tools with a magnifying loupe permanently affixed to one eye. Instead, he stood tall and straight, perhaps in his early 50s, with thick hair the color of burnished silver, swept back from a face that seemed carved by an artist's hand. His eyes were the deep blue of twilight, surrounded by fine lines that suggested frequent laughter rather than age. He wore a tailored waistcoat over a crisp white shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked by the light scars of his craft. "I have a watch that needs repair," I said, then cleared my throat when my voice came out softer than intended. "It was my mother's." His expression softened. "May I see it?" Our fingers brushed as I placed the pocket watch in his outstretched palm. He handled it with reverent care, turning it over to examine the engraving on the back, a pattern of ivy leaves surrounding my mother's initials. "Beautiful craftsmanship," he murmured. "19th century, Swiss-made." His fingers found the catch that had resisted my attempts, and the cover sprang open. "Ah, I see the problem. The balance wheel is damaged. Fixable, certainly, but it will take time." "How long?" I asked. His twilight eyes met mine. "A week, perhaps 2. These things cannot be rushed, mademoiselle." "Ava Martin," I supplied. "I restore stained glass windows. I understand about taking time with delicate things." Something flickered across his face. Interest, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. "In that case, Mademoiselle Martin, I think you might appreciate seeing something few others do." He gestured for me to follow him toward the rear of the shop, past a heavy velvet curtain that separated the public space from his workshop. A long bench stretched along one wall, covered with the specialized tools of horology, tweezers, files, tiny screwdrivers, and magnifiers. Half-assembled movements lay in labeled trays, waiting for his attention. But Grayson didn't stop there. Instead, he moved to a seemingly solid panel of dark wood at the back wall and pressed against it in a specific sequence. With a soft click, the panel swung inward, revealing a hidden door. "What I'm about to show you requires, shall we say, a certain perspective," he said, holding the door for me. "Most people see only broken things where I see possibility." Curiosity propelled me forward into a room that shouldn't have existed within the confines of the small shop. Larger than the front room, it held dozens of clocks arranged on shelves and tables. Unlike those in the main shop, many of these timepieces appeared broken or unfinished. Some had exposed mechanisms. Others lacked hands or numbers. "Your restoration workshop?" I guessed. Grayson smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "In a manner of speaking." He crossed to the nearest table and lifted a small desk clock with an ornate silver face. When he wound it and set it down, I noticed something odd. "The second hand," I said. "It's moving backward." "Yes." His voice held a note of satisfaction. "As are all the clocks in this room." I moved through the space, examining one timepiece after another. Each one, from pocket watches to wall clocks, ran counterclockwise, their hands making their circuit against the natural order. "How is this possible?" I asked. "And why?" Grayson leaned against his workbench, regarding me with an inscrutable expression. The how is a trade secret passed down through generations of my family. As for the why, his gaze drifted to a particularly ornate carriage clock on a high shelf. "Some moments are too beautiful to move past, Mademoiselle Martin, and some hearts too broken to move forward." The sadness in his voice resonated within me. Since my mother's death, I'd felt stuck between the past and present, unable to move on but unable to go back. "Can I touch them?" I asked. He nodded. "Please." I approached a grandfather clock with a case of deep cherry wood. Its face showed not only the time but the phases of the moon, all running in reverse. When my fingers brushed the smooth wood, a peculiar sensation washed over me, like plunging into cool water on a hot day. A momentary displacement followed by relief. "You felt it," Grayson observed suddenly beside me. "Not everyone does." "What was that?" "Time," he said simply. "Or rather, its echo." He hesitated as if weighing a decision, then added, "These clocks don't merely run backward, Mademoiselle Martin. Under certain conditions, they can take one there." I should have laughed, or made my excuses and fled from this strange man with his impossible claims. Instead, I found myself asking, "Will you show me?" Something sparked in his eyes. Hope, perhaps. "I was rather hoping you might help me instead. Your skills with restoration, combined with my knowledge of these timepieces." He gestured around the room. "Many of these are incomplete or damaged. I haven't been able to finish them alone." "Why me?" "You felt the echo," he said, as if this explained everything. "And you understand that beauty sometimes needs to be reconstructed piece by piece." He extended his hand. "Will you help me, Ava?" I hesitated for a moment before clasping his hand. His palm was warm, marked with calluses from years of delicate work. "Yes," I said, "I will." And so began my apprenticeship with Grayson Bellamy, master of time's mysteries. Days stretched into weeks as I split my time between my stained glass workshop and Grayson's hidden room. My fingers, already deft from years of cutting and soldering glass, adapted quickly to the intricate work of clock repair. "Gentle pressure," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear as we bent over a particularly stubborn mechanism. "Feel the resistance, then yield to it." I became acutely aware of his proximity, the subtle scent of sandalwood that clung to his clothes, the strength in his hands as they enveloped mine, the occasional brush of his chest against my back when he leaned closer to demonstrate a technique. A different kind of tension wound itself around my heart, as precise and measured as the clockwork before us. One evening, as Paris's lights glimmered in the gathering dusk outside the shop windows, Grayson brought out a bottle of aged cognac and 2 crystal glasses. "A celebration," he explained, pouring amber liquid that caught the lamplight. "You've completed your first backward clock." The timepiece in question sat before us on the workbench, a small carriage clock with an enameled face showing a scene of the Seine. I'd replaced the damaged enamel work while Grayson had adjusted the mechanism. Together, we'd created something both beautiful and impossible. "2 unlikely partnerships," he said, raising his glass. "And backward clocks," I added, clinking my glass against his. The cognac burned sweetly down my throat. As warmth spread through my limbs, I studied Grayson's face in the gentle light. The silver in his hair gleamed, and the lines around his eyes deepened as he smiled. "Why did you trust me with your secret?" I asked. He contemplated his glass. "Perhaps because you trusted me with something equally precious." He nodded toward my mother's pocket watch, which lay repaired on the workbench. "Or perhaps because I've been alone with these clocks for too long." "How long have you been making them?" "My grandfather taught me the secret when I was a boy, but I've only been creating them in earnest for the past 10 years. He set down his glass. "Since Marie died." "Your wife?" I asked softly. He nodded. "Cancer. Too quick and too slow all at once." His fingers traced the edge of the workbench. "Afterward, I became obsessed with these timepieces and their possibilities." I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. "I'm sorry." His eyes met mine, filled with something that made my breath catch. "I've never shown anyone else the backward room. Not even Marie knew about it." The weight of this confession hung between us. Impulsively, I asked, "Will you show me what they do? You said they don't just run backward." Grayson's expression turned cautious. "It's not without risk." "What kind of risk?" "The clocks create pockets of reverse time," he explained. "Brief periods where one can experience the past directly. But the danger lies in wanting to stay there." "Have you?" I asked. "Stayed too long?" Pain flickered across his face. "Once. Early after Marie died. I lost nearly a week to a few hours in the past. When I returned to the present, I was not well." He straightened. Decision made. "But a short experience should be safe enough. Shall we try?" My heart thrummed with anticipation. "Yes." Grayson selected a pocket watch from a drawer. Gold with an intricate engine-turned pattern. "This one provides the gentlest passage," he explained, winding it carefully. "We'll start with just 15 minutes. He pulled 2 chairs close together and instructed me to clasp the watch between our joined hands. "Close your eyes," he whispered. "Listen to the ticking and breathe with it." I did as he asked, feeling the cool metal warming between our palms. The ticking seemed to grow louder, synchronizing with my heartbeat until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. A sensation like falling overcame me, and I gripped Grayson's hands tighter. "Open your eyes, Ava," Grayson's voice, somehow younger, said. I did, and gasped. We sat in the same positions, but the shop around us had transformed. Sunlight streamed through windows that seemed cleaner, brighter. The tools on the workbench gleamed newer, and the scent in the air was fresher, with notes of coffee and something baking nearby. But the most startling change was in Grayson himself. The silver had vanished from his hair, leaving it richly brown. The lines around his eyes had softened, though the eyes themselves, those remarkable twilight blue eyes, remained the same, watching me with wonder. "What year is it?" I whispered. 2014, he answered. 10 years ago. I released his hands and stood on shaky legs, moving to the window. Outside, Paris flowed past, subtly different from the city I knew. Women wore styles I remembered from a decade ago, and the cafe across the street had a different name and facade. "This is real," I breathed. "We're really here." "For a little while," Grayson said, coming to stand beside me. He looked perhaps 40 in this time, handsome in a way that made my pulse quicken. "We have about 15 minutes before the watch brings us back. Can we go outside?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Stay close to me. The watch's influence extends only so far." We stepped out into a Paris bathed in golden late-afternoon light. The air felt different against my skin, fresher, filled with electricity. Music drifted from somewhere nearby, an accordion playing a wistful melody. Grayson offered his arm, and I took it, hyper-aware of the solid warmth of him beside me. We strolled along the narrow street as if we were any other couple enjoying the day. "Is this how you remember it?" I asked. "Better," he replied, his eyes never leaving my face. "You're here." The simple statement sent heat rushing to my cheeks. This younger Grayson moved with a confident ease, unburdened by the grief that haunted his older self. Yet I could see echoes of the man I knew in his expressions, his gestures, the careful way he guided me through the crowded sidewalk. We reached a small square where the accordion player sat by a fountain. Coins glinted in his open case as he played La Vie en Rose. Grayson stopped, turning to face me. "May I have this dance, Mademoiselle Martin?" Without waiting for my answer, he swept me into a gentle waltz beside the fountain. I followed his lead, surprised by how naturally our bodies moved together. His hand at the small of my back guided me with perfect pressure, and his eyes held mine with an intensity that made the world around us fade. "I've wanted to do this since you first walked into my shop," he confessed. You didn't even know me 3 weeks ago, I reminded him, breathless from more than just the dancing. His smile held secrets. In my time, I've known you longer. Before I could ask what he meant, a tremor passed through the air around us. The music wavered, sounding suddenly distant. The watch, Grayson said, his expression turning serious. Our time is ending. He led me quickly back toward the shop, his hand firm around mine. As we reached the door, the trembling intensified. The street seemed to ripple like heat waves on summer pavement. Inside the shop, Grayson pulled me close, one arm around my waist, while his other hand retrieved the pocket watch from his vest. Hold on to me, he instructed. I wrapped my arms around him, pressing my face against his chest. His heartbeat thundered under my ear, quick but steady. The world tilted and swirled around us, colors bleeding into one another until everything went momentarily dark. Then, with a sensation like surfacing from deep water, we were back in the present. The younger Grayson was gone, replaced by the silver-haired man I'd come to know. But my arms remained around him, and his around me. For a moment, neither of us moved. I became aware of every point of contact between us. His hand splayed against my back, my palms pressed to his shoulders, our bodies aligned from chest to knee. His eyes, unchanged across the years, searched mine. Slowly, reluctantly, he released me and stepped back. Are you all right? He asked, his voice rough. I nodded, unable to find words for the emotions swirling through me. I'd just danced with a younger version of this man in Paris 10 years ago. More unsettling was the realization that I'd felt drawn to both versions of him, the youthful clockmaker with laughing eyes, and the silver-haired craftsman with sorrow etched into his features. That was, I began. Dangerous, he finished. I shouldn't have taken you outside the shop. The watch's field is strongest here where it was made. I'm fine, I assured him. It was wonderful. His expression softened. Yes, it was. He carefully placed the watch back in its drawer. But we should be more cautious in the future. If you wish there to be a future for this experiment. I do, I said firmly. Something like hope flickered in his eyes before he glanced at the clock on the wall. A normal one, running forward. It's late. Let me call you a taxi. As I gathered my things, I felt as if I were waking from a dream, except for the lingering sensation of Grayson's hand at my waist and the memory of music by a fountain. Over the following weeks, our work on the backward clocks intensified, as did the current between us. Each timepiece we repaired together became an opportunity for another journey, brief excursions into moments from the past decade. We established rules. Never stay longer than 30 minutes. Never venture far from the shop. Never attempt to change anything significant. Within these constraints, we created stolen pockets of magic. In 2017, we listened to a violinist play Bach in Place des Vosges as rain fell, sharing Grayson's umbrella as droplets turned the cobblestones to mirrors. In 2012, we discovered a hidden courtyard where an artist had filled every wall with trompe-l'oeil windows, looking out on impossible landscapes. In 2019, we sat at a tiny cafe table as snow fell silently around us, warming our hands on cups of rich chocolate. In each timeline, Grayson appeared at the corresponding age, sometimes with touches of silver at his temples, sometimes with none at all, but always with those same twilight eyes that followed me, as if memorizing every detail. In the present, our relationship had evolved with cautious tenderness. His hand would linger on mine when passing a tool. I would bring morning pastries and coffee, learning exactly how he took each. We worked later and later into the evenings, reluctant to part. One night, after returning from a brief visit to 2016, Grayson closed the drawer containing our travel watch with unusual finality. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I've been selfish," he said, not meeting my eyes. "These journeys, they're becoming too frequent, too seductive." "I don't feel seduced against my will," I countered. "I want to go." "That's precisely the problem." He finally looked at me, his expression grave. "Time wasn't meant to be experienced this way, Ava." Moving back and forth, sampling moments like dishes at a feast. The human heart wasn't designed for it. "Wasn't your heart designed by the same creator who made time?" I asked softly. His eyes widened slightly at this perspective. "Perhaps. But I've seen what happens when someone becomes addicted to revisiting the past. My grandfather spent his final years lost in his own memories, unable to distinguish between what had been and what was." I moved closer, until just inches separated us. "Is that what you fear will happen to me? Or to yourself?" "Both," he admitted. "I watch how your face lights up each time we prepare for a journey, and I recognize the same hunger that once consumed me after Marie died. The desire to escape the present." "That's not why I go," I said. "Then why?" I reached up, hesitating briefly before placing my palm against his cheek. His skin was warm, the slight roughness of evening stubble beneath my fingers. "I go to see all versions of you," I confessed, "to understand the man you were and the man you've become. When we're in the past, I see glimmers of joy unclouded by loss. And when we return, I see a depth and wisdom that only experience could create." He stood perfectly still under my touch, as if afraid any movement might shatter the moment. "And which do you prefer?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The younger man without grief's shadow, or this older version standing before you?" I stroked my thumb across his cheekbone. "They're both you. I've fallen in love with the whole timeline." The words once spoken couldn't be taken back, nor did I wish to retrieve them. They hung in the air between us, true and terrifying in their implications. Grayson closed his eyes briefly, as if in pain. When he opened them, they shone with moisture. "Ava," he breathed, my name a prayer and a question. Then his hands were cradling my face, and his mouth was on mine, gentle at first, then with growing urgency. I pressed closer, my arms winding around his neck as years of loneliness dissolved in the heat between us. He tasted of the mint tea we'd shared earlier, and something uniquely his own. His fingers threaded through my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss as my body melted against his. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that every year we've visited," he confessed. "Why didn't you?" "I needed to be certain you wanted the man I am now, not just reflections from the past." His hands moved to my waist, holding me as if I might disappear. "I'm 53 years old, Ava. You're barely 30. I've loved and lost a wife. My future has fewer years than my past." "Time is your specialty," I reminded him. "Shouldn't you know better than anyone that it's quality that matters, not quantity?" A smile tugged at his lips. "Spoken like a true artist." His expression sobered. "But there's something else you should know before this goes further." He led me to a small desk in the corner of the backward room and unlocked its drawer. From inside, he withdrew a leather-bound journal and opened it to a marked page. A photograph was paper-clipped to the corner, faded with age, showing a young woman with dark hair bent over what looked like a stained glass panel. "My grandmother," Grayson said quietly. "Elise Bellamy, born Elise Martin." I stared at the photograph, then at Grayson. "Martin is a common name," I said, but uncertainty crept into my voice. "True. But how common is this?" He gently turned my mother's pocket watch over, to reveal the ivy patterns surrounding her initials. Then he showed me a sketch in the journal, the exact same pattern, labeled Elise's design. "This watch originally belonged to my grandmother," Grayson explained. "She gave it to her daughter, who must have given it to your mother." My mind raced through the implications. Are we related? No, he assured me quickly. Elise was my grandfather's second wife. There's no blood connection, but there is a connection through time. One I didn't understand until you walked into my shop with this watch. You knew from the beginning, I realized. You recognized the watch. He nodded. I suspected, but I wasn't certain until you responded to the backward clocks. The ability to sense time's echo runs in families that have worked with these timepieces. My grandfather believed some people are naturally attuned to time's mysteries. Your reaction confirmed what I'd hoped, that you're connected to this legacy through Elise. Did you approach me because of the watch? I asked, suddenly unsure of everything that had developed between us. Grayson took my hands. I showed you the backward room because of the watch, he corrected. Everything else, our work together, our journeys, this. He raised our joined hands to his lips, kissing my fingers. Happened because of who you are, who we are together. I studied his face, finding only sincerity in his eyes. So what does this mean for us? It means you have a choice, he said. The backward clocks offer us something few lovers ever have, the ability to experience one another across time's spectrum. But that gift comes with responsibility. We must decide how to use it wisely. Understanding dawned. That's why you've been concerned lately. You're afraid we'll become trapped in the past. Not just any past, he said. My past. The years before grief changed me. The implication stung. Do you think I prefer your younger self? Don't you? He's more your equal in years, less marked by loss. I pulled my hands free from his and paced across the room. You don't understand at all, I said, frustration building. When we visit the past, I see fragments of the man standing before me now. And when we return, I see the sum of all you've been and all you've endured. I turned to face him. I love dancing with your younger self, yes. But I come back to the present because this is where you are most completely yourself. Grayson crossed to me slowly, as if approaching a wild creature that might bolt. And what of your future? Children? A husband who won't leave you a widow while you're still young? Don't make my choices for me, I said fiercely. I've seen what time can do, stealing my mother when she should have had decades more. Tomorrow isn't promised to anyone, regardless of age. He stopped before me, close enough that I could see the varied blues in his irises. What do you want, Ava? From time, from life, from me? The question deserved a considered answer. I thought about the backward clocks surrounding us, each one a symbol of humanity's complicated relationship with time. We strive to measure it, control it, reverse it, anything but simply live within it. I want to restore what's broken without erasing its history, I finally said. In my work with stained glass, I preserve the cracks and seams that tell a window's story, even as I make it whole again. I want to love you the same way, honoring all you've been while creating something new. I reached for his hand, and I want us to move forward together, even as we care for these backward-running treasures. Hope dawned across his features like sunrise. Together, he repeated, in the present. With occasional visits to the past, I amended with a smile. For research purposes, of course. He laughed then, the sound transforming his face into something so beautiful it made my heart ache. Of course, he agreed, pulling me into his arms, but no longer than an hour at a time. Agreed, I said, rising on tiptoes to brush my lips against his. We have too much to experience in the here and now. As if to seal our pact, clocks chimed around us, some running backward, some forward, all marking our moment in time. Grayson's arms tightened around me as his mouth found mine again, and I gave myself to the kiss completely, falling into the present with all its imperfect perfection. Outside the shop windows, Paris continued its eternal flow, past and present mingling in ancient streets as couples strolled hand in hand beneath spring blossoms, each creating their own pocket of time where love made every second precious, regardless of which direction the hands on the clock moved. I own you, and yet I would die for you, the silver blade pressed against my palm, drawing a thin line of crimson that spilled onto the ancient marble floor. I didn't flinch. Pain had become my closest companion these past 5 years, ever since the vampires had claimed our world as their own. Do you accept the terms of this blood oath, human? Lucian's voice echoed through the cathedral-like chamber, smooth as velvet, yet sharp as the knife he held. I raised my eyes to meet his, midnight blue with flecks of silver that seemed to capture the light of the torches surrounding us. His beauty was devastating, cruel in its perfection. High cheekbones, full lips curved into a perpetual half-smile, and skin like polished alabaster. The rumors hadn't done him justice. Lord Lucian Aramis was every bit the predator they claimed, and more. I accept, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. My life for theirs. His smile widened, revealing the sharp tips of his fangs. Your life, your blood, your body, everything you are now belongs to me, Isolde Black. The way he said my name sent an unwelcome shiver down my spine. I hated him. I hated every vampire who had stolen our world, who had forced humanity into servitude, who had killed my family and countless others. But I hated myself more at that moment because I couldn't deny the pull I felt toward him despite everything. And in return, I said, you will spare the resistance members you captured. You will grant amnesty to any human who lays down their weapons. Lucian nodded, his eyes never leaving mine as he pressed his own palm against the blade. His blood was darker than mine, almost black in the dim light. When he clasped my hand in his, our blood mingling, I gasped at the sensation, like electricity racing through my veins. The blood oath is sealed, he murmured. You are mine now, Isolde. My bride. The symbol of peace between our kinds. I pulled my hand away, wiping it against the tattered remains of what had once been my battle gear. I agreed to be your bride in name only. Don't confuse that with submission, vampire. He laughed then, a rich sound warming the cold stone around us. Oh, my fierce little warrior. I wouldn't dream of it. The chamber they led me to was unlike anything I had seen since the fall. Luxury didn't begin to describe it. Tapestries of deep crimson and gold adorned walls of polished black stone. A massive four-poster bed dominated the space, draped in silks that shimmered in the firelight. Your quarters, said the servant, a human girl no older than 16 with the telltale puncture marks on her neck. A willing donor. My stomach turned. I'm to be kept in a gilded cage, then. She bowed her head. Lord Lucian thought you would be more comfortable here than in the cells below. How considerate of him, I muttered, running my fingers over the silken bedspread. And where is my husband? The council required his presence. He will join you later. After she left, I spent hours examining every inch of the room, searching for weaknesses, escape routes, anything I could use. The windows, tall, arched things of stained glass, were sealed with magic that repelled me like an invisible wall. The door was heavy oak, reinforced with iron bands, and locked from the outside. I was trapped. Properly. thoroughly trapped. Exhaustion eventually won out over my determination. I sank onto the edge of the bed, allowing myself a moment of weakness as tears threatened to spill. I had led the resistance for 5 years. I had watched friends die, had killed vampires with my own hands, and had survived on hope alone when food and supplies ran scarce. And now I had traded my freedom to save the lives of my people. Had I made the right choice? Or had I just damned us all by aligning myself with the enemy? The door swung open without warning, and Lucian stood framed in the doorway. He had changed from the ceremonial black robes into something more casual, if you could call a silk shirt that probably cost more than most humans earned in a year casual. "You look troubled, bride." He closed the door behind him, the lock clicking into place. I stood, squaring my shoulders. "Don't call me that. It's what you are." He moved toward me with that inhuman grace all vampires possessed, like a liquid shadow. "Would you prefer wife?" "I'd prefer Isolde." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell him. Sandalwood and something metallic, like blood, but richer. "Very well, Isolde. Are your accommodations suitable?" I laughed bitterly. "For a prisoner? They're luxurious." "You're not a prisoner." His eyes darkened. "You're my consort." A pretty word for the same thing. I folded my arms across my chest. "What happens now, Lucian? You've made your point to your council. You've bound the resistance leader to you. What more do you want?" He studied me with those unsettling eyes. "Want? I want peace, Isolde, the same as you." Peace through subjugation isn't peace. And peace through the extermination of my kind isn't peace either. Yet that was your goal, wasn't it? He moved to a small table and poured dark red liquid from a crystal decanter. "Your resistance has killed hundreds of vampires. After your kind killed thousands of humans." My nails dug into my palms. "Don't pretend you're the victims here." He handed me a glass. "Wine. Real wine, not blood. I thought you might need it." I took it cautiously, sniffing it before taking a small sip. It was wine. Rich, complex, better than anything I'd tasted since before the fall. "Thank you," I said reluctantly. Lucian poured himself a glass of something else, something darker. The history between our species is complicated. More so than you know. But that's a conversation for another time. He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." I didn't raise mine in return. "To survival." His lips quirked up at one corner. Always the pragmatist. He sipped from his glass, watching me over the rim. "You should rest. Tomorrow we'll be trying for both of us." "Why?" "Because tomorrow I present you to the court as my bride." His expression turned grim. "And not all of my kind are pleased with my choice." Sleep eluded me that night, despite the comfort of the bed, the first real bed I'd slept in for years. When dawn broke, painting the stained glass windows with bars of colored light, I was already awake, sitting by the fire and planning. The blood oath prevented me from directly harming Lucian or plotting against him specifically. I had felt the magic burn through me when we clasped hands. But it said nothing about gathering information, learning the layout of this fortress, finding weaknesses in the vampire hierarchy. I might be bound to Lucian, but my loyalty remained with humanity. A knock at the door preceded the entrance of 3 servant girls, each carrying various items: clothes, jewelry, cosmetics. "Lord Lucian requests your presence at court in 2 hours, said the eldest, a woman perhaps a few years older than my 27. "We're here to help you prepare." I wanted to refuse, to show up in my tattered resistance gear just to spite them all. But that would be childish, and worse, it would be wasting an opportunity. Court meant vampires. Vampires meant information, Information meant power. So I allowed them to bathe me in scented water, to dress me in a gown of midnight blue silk that matched Lucian's eyes, a coincidence that didn't escape my notice, and to adorn me with silver jewelry set with sapphires. When they finished, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Gone was the resistance leader with dirt-smudged cheeks and determination in her eyes. In her place stood someone who looked like she belonged in this world of luxury and blood. The thought made me sick. Lucian arrived to escort me himself, dressed in formal attire that accentuated his broad shoulders and lean strength. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes widening slightly as he took me in. "You look..." He paused, seeming to search for the right word. "Domesticated?" I suggested bitterly. His lips quirked. "I was going to say regal, like the queen you are now." I snorted. "I'm no queen." "But you are." He offered his arm. "You are consort to the Lord of House Aramis, the first house of the Vampire Council. That makes you royalty in our world." I ignored his arm. I didn't ask for a title. Few who deserve power seek it. He lowered his arm with a slight shrug. "Come, we shouldn't keep the court waiting." The walk through the fortress, palace really, gave me my first real glimpse of vampire society. It was nothing like the savage, blood-soaked chaos I had imagined. Vampires moved through the halls with purpose, discussing politics, art, and science. Human servants walked freely, without chains or obvious coercion. Some even smiled at their masters. "Surprised?" Lucian murmured, noticing my expression. "Confused," I admitted. "This isn't what I expected. The world isn't as black and white as your resistance paints it." We reached a set of massive double doors, carved with intricate scenes of battle and feasting. Guards in black armor stood at attention, bowing deeply as we approached. "Remember," Lucian said quietly as the doors opened. "Show no fear. They can smell it." The vampire court was a riot of color and sound. Hundreds of them, dressed in their finest, gathered in a cavernous hall with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Thrones of ebony and silver stood on a raised dais at the far end, 7 of them in total. Every eye turned to us as we entered. Conversations died. Music faded. The silence was absolute. And then the whispers began. Human. Resistance leader. Blood oath. Abomination. Lucian's hand found the small of my back, not guiding but supporting. I hated that I leaned into it, just slightly. We walked the length of the hall, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain every vampire could hear it. Perhaps they could. The dais loomed closer, and I could now see the 6 vampires who occupied the other thrones. 3 men and 3 women, each with the same ageless beauty as Lucian, but with none of his warmth. Wait, warmth? When had I started thinking of this monster as warm? "Lord Aramis," said the central figure, an ancient vampire with skin like parchment and eyes like frozen blood. "You honor us with your presence, and with such interesting company." Lucian bowed, and I followed suit, though it pained me to do so. "Hi, Lord Corvinus. May I present Isolde Black, leader of the human resistance, and now my consort by blood oath." Murmurs rippled through the court. "Bold move, young Aramis," he said. "Very bold. Some might say foolish." "Some lack vision," Lucian replied smoothly. "The war between our species has gone on long enough. This union represents a new beginning." "Or the beginning of the end," said a female vampire. "Bringing our greatest enemy into our midst? Have you lost your mind, Lucian?" I bristled at being spoken about as if I wasn't there. "I can hear you, you know." The court fell silent again, shock rippling through the crowd. Apparently, humans did not speak unless spoken to here. The female vampire's eyes blazed with anger. "You dare?" "She dares because she is my equal," Lucian interrupted, his voice like steel. "The blood oath binds us as one. Any insult to her is an insult to me, Lady Bathory." Bathory, a name I knew from resistance reports. One of the cruelest vampires, responsible for the deaths of hundreds of human women. My hands itched for a weapon. Corvinus raised a withered hand. "Peace, Elizabeth. Lord Aramis has made his choice, however, unconventional." His eyes fixed on me. "Tell me, human, do you enter this union willingly?" "I enter it to save my people," I answered honestly. "Whether that's willing depends on your definition." A chuckle rippled through the crowd, surprising me. Perhaps vampires appreciated candor more than I'd thought. Corvinus's lips twitched. A diplomatic answer. "Very well. The Council acknowledges this blood oath and the protection it extends to the human resistance fighters. But know this, Isolde Black. If you betray our trust, if you attempt to harm any vampire under our protection, the oath will not save you or your people." I inclined my head. "Understood." The formalities continued. Pledges of loyalty, ritual exchanges that meant nothing to me but seemed to satisfy the court. Throughout it all, Lucian remained at my side, a steady presence I found myself grudgingly grateful for. When it was over, when we finally returned to my chambers, I collapsed onto a chair, exhaustion washing over me. "You did well," Lucian said, pouring me another glass of wine. "Better than I expected." I accepted the wine with a nod of thanks. "I've faced worse than a room full of judgmental vampires." "Have you?" He settled into the chair opposite mine, studying me with those unsettling eyes. "What is the worst thing you've faced, Isolde?" The question caught me off guard. I took a sip of wine to buy time, considering my answer. "Watching my brother die in my arms after a vampire raid," I said finally. "He was 16. Something flickered in Lucian's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or recognition. "I'm sorry. Are you?" I leaned forward. "It was your kind who killed him." "Not all vampires are the same, just as not all humans are the same." He set his glass down. "The raid that killed your brother, when was it?" 3 years ago, a village near the Western Mountains." Lucian's expression darkened. "That wasn't sanctioned by the Council. That was the work of rogues, vampires who reject our laws." I laughed bitterly. "And that makes a difference to the dead?" "It should make a difference to the living." He stood, pacing to the window. "The Council has been trying to rein in the rogues for years. They're as much our enemies as they are yours." I wanted to argue, to maintain the simple hatred that had fueled me for so long. But doubt crept in, unwelcome and persistent. If he was lying, he was the most convincing liar I had ever met. "Why me?" I asked suddenly. "Why choose the resistance leader for your political statement? There are easier ways to make peace." Lucian turned back to me, his expression unreadable. "Because you're the only human who has ever killed an elder and lived to tell the tale." My blood ran cold. "How did you know that was me?" "I've been watching you for longer than you realize, Isolde." His voice dropped lower. "Your courage, your determination, your refusal to surrender even when all hope seemed lost. Those are rare qualities in any species." I swallowed hard, uncomfortable with the admiration in his voice. "So this is... what? Respect?" "Partly." He moved closer, and I fought the urge to retreat. "But it's also strategy. The resistance follows you. The vampires respect power. By binding myself to you, I bridge 2 worlds. At what cost? I whispered. His eyes searched mine. That remains to be seen. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into a month. Life in the vampire stronghold settled into a routine that was almost normal. Lucian kept his distance, physically at least, sleeping in adjacent chambers and never pressing for more than my company at court functions and private meals. Our conversations grew longer and deeper. I learned about vampire history, the centuries they had spent in hiding, their near extinction at the hands of humans in the Middle Ages, and their eventual decision to claim dominance before they were wiped out completely. He learned about the resistance, our strategies, our victories and failures, our desperate hope to reclaim a world that had been taken from us. And somewhere along the way, the lines began to blur. I found myself looking forward to our evening discussions, to his dry wit and surprising insights. I caught myself watching him when he thought I wasn't looking, admiring the grace with which he moved, the intelligence in his eyes. It was dangerous, this softening. I knew it, but I couldn't stop it. The change in our relationship didn't go unnoticed. Whispers followed us through the court, some approving, others poisonous with hatred. Lady Bathory in particular watched me with murder in her eyes, and I made sure never to turn my back on her. One evening, as the autumn wind howled outside the fortress walls, Lucian returned to our chambers earlier than usual, his expression troubled. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting aside the book I'd been reading, a history of vampire-human relations that contradicted everything I'd believed. He poured himself a glass of blood without answering immediately. When he turned to me, his eyes were dark with worry. "There's been an attack on a human settlement near the eastern border. 30 dead, including children." My heart clenched. Vampires? Yes, rogues, led by a former lieutenant of mine. He drained his glass in one swallow. They left a message, for me. What did it say? Blood cannot be diluted without weakening the strain. His jaw tightened. It's me they're targeting. My decision to align with you, with humanity. I stood, moving to his side without thinking. "This isn't your fault." "Isn't it?" He set the glass down with enough force to crack it. "I knew there would be opposition. I didn't think they would go this far. Then we fight back." I said it without hesitation, surprising myself. "We find these rogues and we stop them." Lucian looked at me, really looked at me, with an intensity that made my breath catch. "We?" I hesitated only a moment. "Yes, we. Your enemies are killing my people. That makes them my enemies too." Something shifted between us in that moment. An acknowledgement of shared purpose, of alliance beyond the forced terms of our blood oath. "I'm sending a hunting party at dawn," he said. "Elite warriors, trackers who can follow the rogue's trail. I want to go with them." He shook his head immediately. "Too dangerous." "I've been fighting vampires for 5 years," I reminded him. "I know their weaknesses better than your warriors do." "And if you get yourself killed, what happens to our alliance then?" His voice roughened. "What happens to—" He stopped abruptly. "To what?" I pressed. His eyes met mine, and the emotion in them floored me. "To us," he said simply. I didn't know how to respond to that, to the implication that there was an us beyond political necessity, to the way my heart raced at the thought. "I can take care of myself," I said instead. "I know you can." He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek in the lightest of touches. "That doesn't mean you should have to." I leaned into his touch before I could stop myself. His skin was cool against mine, but not cold, never as cold as I had expected a vampire to be. "Let me do this," I said softly. Let me prove that our alliance can work both ways. He searched my face for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. On one condition. What? I come with you. Dawn found us at the eastern gate of the fortress, a party of 10, 8 vampire warriors, Lucian, and myself. I wore battle gear again, not the finery of court, and the familiar weight of weapons at my hip and across my back centered me. The vampires regarded me with mixtures of curiosity, respect, and suspicion. I ignored them, focusing instead on the task ahead. Lucian gave the order to move out, and we set a punishing pace through the foothills, following the faint trail left by the rogue vampires. I kept up easily, my years with the resistance having hardened me to long treks and difficult terrain. By midday, we reached the site of the attack, a small farming community reduced to ash and blood. Bodies lay where they had fallen, some partially burned, others drained completely of blood. I knelt beside the smallest one, a child no older than 5, and felt the familiar rage rise within me. This was never sanctioned, Lucian said quietly, coming to stand beside me. This is not how we feed, not how we live. I looked up at him, searching his face for lies and finding only grief and anger that mirrored my own. Then why do your rogues do it? Power. The thrill of the kill. His hands clenched at his sides. Some vampires believe humans are nothing more than livestock. The council has outlawed such thinking, but laws are only as good as their enforcement, I finished for him. He nodded grimly. Come, the trail leads north. We buried the dead before continuing, a task the vampire warriors undertook without complaint to my surprise. One of them, a female with hair like spun gold, worked alongside me to dig the graves. You're not what I expected, she said, as we lowered a body into the earth. Neither are you, I replied. She offered a small smile. Mira, House Corvinus. Isolde. House. I hesitated, still uncomfortable claiming Lucian's name as my own. House Aramis, she finished for me. We know who you are, Oath Bride. The question is whether you know. I frowned. What do you mean? But Lucian called for us to move out before she could answer, and the moment was lost. We tracked the rogues into the mountains as night fell. Vampires saw perfectly in darkness, but I struggled to keep my footing on the treacherous slopes. Lucian stayed close, occasionally steadying me with a hand at my elbow or the small of my back. We're close, he murmured as we reached a narrow pass between 2 peaks. They're making for the old fortress beyond the ridge. I nodded, tightening my grip on my weapons, a silver-edged sword and a crossbow loaded with wooden bolts. Standard resistance issue for vampire hunting. Lucian eyed them with a raised brow. Planning to use those on me if I turn on you? Would they work? I countered. His lips quirked. Probably not. I'm older than I look. How old is that, exactly? Old enough to remember when humans feared the dark for good reason. Before I could press for a more specific answer, Mira returned from her scouting position ahead. My lord, they've set up defenses around the fortress. At least 20 rogues, maybe more. Lucian frowned. More than we anticipated. We should return for reinforcements, suggested one of the other warriors, a giant of a vampire with scars crisscrossing his face. No time, I said. They'll be gone by then, or they'll attack another settlement. What do you suggest then? Lucian asked me, surprising the others with his deference to a human. I considered the problem. A diversion. Something to draw them out while a smaller team infiltrates the fortress. And what would make a suitable diversion? Mira asked. I smiled grimly. Me. The plan was simple but dangerous. I would approach the fortress alone, posing as a lost human traveler. The rogues, unable to resist fresh blood, would pursue me into the narrow pass where Lucian and the others would ambush them. Meanwhile, Mira and 2 others would circle to the fortress's rear entrance. "This is madness," Lucian growled as I prepared to descend from our hidden position. "They'll tear you apart before you reach the pass." "I've outrun vampires before." I checked my weapons one last time. "Besides, I thought you said I was special." His eyes flashed with something fierce and possessive. "You are, which is why I won't lose you to this foolish gambit." "You won't lose me." The words came more easily than I expected. "I promised to be your bride, remember? I keep my promises." Before he could argue further, I slipped away, making my way down the rocky slope toward the fortress looming in the moonlight. As I approached, I deliberately made noise, stumbling and cursing as if lost. It didn't take long before I spotted them, their shadows detaching from the fortress walls, moving with predatory grace. "Well, well," called a voice that raised the hair on my neck. "What have we here? A human, all alone in the mountains?" I whirled, feigning surprise and fear. The vampire who had spoken stepped into the moonlight, tall, gaunt, with eyes like burning coals. Behind him, others emerged from the darkness. "Please," I begged, backing away. "I'm lost. My caravan was attacked. I'm just trying to find the main road." The leader laughed. "Oh, you found something much more interesting than a road, little human." I turned and ran, not having to fake the surge of adrenaline that propelled me forward. Behind me, I heard their excited cries as they gave chase. The thrill of the hunt was already in their blood. The pass loomed ahead, dark and narrow. I pushed myself harder, feeling the presence of the vampires closing in. One leaped ahead of me, cutting off my escape, his fangs bared in a feral grin. "Going somewhere," he hissed. I skidded to a halt, drawing my sword. "As a matter of fact, yes." His expression shifted from triumph to confusion, and then to shock as an arrow sprouted from his chest, missing his heart, but sending him stumbling backward. Lucian and his warriors descended from the cliffs above, moving with lethal precision. The fight was brutal and chaotic, vampire against vampire, with me in the middle, my silver blade flashing in the moonlight as I fought alongside my former enemies. It should have felt wrong. It didn't. I lost track of Lucian in the melee, focusing on survival as 2 rogues cornered me against the cliff face. I dispatched one with a bolt through the eye, but the second knocked the crossbow from my hands and lunged for my throat. I ducked, bringing my sword up in an arc that would have severed a human's head, but only opened a deep gash across the vampire's chest. He howled in pain, staggering back before charging again. This time I wasn't fast enough. His weight slammed into me, driving me to the ground. Fangs snapped inches from my throat as I struggled to hold him off, the sword trapped between us. "Isolde." Lucian's voice cut through the chaos, desperate and enraged. The weight suddenly lifted as the vampire was torn away from me. Lucian stood over him, his eyes blazing with a cold fire I had never seen before. With one fluid motion, he drove a hand into the rogue's chest and ripped out his heart. "Are you hurt?" He was at my side in an instant, his hands checking for injuries, his voice rough with concern. "I'm fine," I gasped, allowing him to pull me to my feet. "The others?" "Dealing with the stragglers. Mira should be in the fortress by now." As if summoned by his words, Mira appeared at the mouth of the pass, her face grim. "My lord, you need to see this." The fortress's interior was a chamber of horrors. Humans hung in various stages of exsanguination, some still alive but barely. Other bodies lay discarded on the floor, drained completely. But it was the center of the chamber that drew our attention. There, on a throne of bones and iron, sat Lady Bathory, her red lips curved in a smile that chilled me to the core. "Lucian," she purred. "How thoughtful of you to join us. And you brought your pet. How sweet." Lucian pushed me behind him, his posture shifting to one of coiled tension. "Elizabeth, I should have known you were behind this." She laughed. "Behind it? I created it. This glorious return to our true nature." She gestured to the hanging humans. "We are predators, Lucian, not politicians, not peacekeepers. We are meant to rule through fear, not compromise." "You're insane," he said flatly. "The council will have your head for this." "The council is weak, just like you've become." Her eyes flicked to me with undisguised hatred. "Mixing your blood with hers, diluting our strength. You were meant to be the strongest of us, Lucian, the heir to the first house, and look what you've reduced yourself to, a human's lapdog." I stepped out from behind Lucian, my sword ready. He's twice the leader you'll ever be. Bathory's eyes widened, then narrowed with rage. "You dare speak to me, cattle?" "I dare a lot of things," I replied, moving to stand beside Lucian rather than behind him. "Including this." I lunged forward, my silver blade flashing toward her heart. She was fast, inhumanly so, but I had spent years learning to anticipate vampire movements. The blade sliced across her arm as she twisted away, drawing a hiss of pain. "Kill them!" she shrieked to her remaining followers. "Kill them all!" The battle erupted again, more desperate this time. Lucian fought at my back, our movements synchronized as if we had trained together for years. Where I was vulnerable, he defended. Where he left an opening, I covered. Lady Bathory circled us, waiting for her chance. When it came, a momentary separation as I dispatched a rogue and Lucian turned to help Mira. She struck. She moved too quickly for me to track, a blur of pale skin and crimson silk. One moment she was yards away. The next, her hand closed around my throat, lifting me off the ground. "I'm going to drain you dry," she whispered, her fangs extending. "And I'm going to make him watch." I clawed at her hands, struggled for air, for purchase, for anything that might free me. My vision darkened at the edges. "Elizabeth!" Lucian's voice cut through the fog descending over my mind. "Release her or die where you stand." Bathory laughed. "You won't kill me, Lucian. You don't have the—" Her words ended in a gurgle as a silver blade erupted from her chest. Not from Lucian, but from Mira, who stood behind her with grim satisfaction. "For the record," Mira said as Bathory crumpled to the ground, "he absolutely would have killed you." Lucian caught me as I fell, cradling me against his chest as I gasped for air. "Isolde, look at me. Stay with me." "Not going anywhere," I managed, my voice raw. "We had a deal." Relief flooded his features, followed by something deeper, more intense. Before I could identify it, he lowered his mouth to mine. The kiss was gentle, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. Instead, I wound my arms around his neck and pulled him closer, surrendering to the feelings I had been fighting for weeks. His lips were warm. How had I ever thought vampires would be cold? And they moved against mine with a tenderness that made my heart ache. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, I saw the same wonder in his eyes that I felt in my soul. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you stood before the council and called them out on their hypocrisy," he murmured, his forehead resting against mine. I laughed shakily. "I've wanted to kill you since the moment you conquered my world. Funny how things change." "Do they?" He pulled back slightly, searching my face. "Have your feelings changed that much, Isolde? Can you truly stand beside a vampire, beside me, without hatred in your heart?" It was the question I had been asking myself for weeks. The answer came more easily than I expected. I hated what I thought you were, I said quietly. A monster who saw humans as nothing but food. But you're not that monster, are you? He shook his head slowly. No more than you're the bloodthirsty terrorist some of my kind believed you to be. Around us, the battle had ended. Mira and the others were freeing the surviving humans, their actions gentle and respectful. Vampires helping humans. Humans accepting that help without fear. A new beginning. Just as Lucian had promised. What happens now? I asked, still held in the circle of his arms. His eyes, those midnight blue eyes that had haunted my dreams, held mine steadily. That depends on you. The blood oath binds us, but it doesn't dictate the nature of our bond. That choice is ours. And if I choose to make this real? I pressed my palm against his chest, feeling the slow, steady beat of his heart. Not just political, not just strategic, but real. His hand covered mine. Then I would be honored, Isolde Black, because I have chosen you already, in every way that matters. In that moment, surrounded by the aftermath of violence but filled with the promise of peace, I made my choice. I choose you, I whispered against his lips. Not because of an oath or political necessity, but because of who you are. His smile was radiant, transforming his features from merely beautiful to breathtaking. And I choose you, Isolde, now and for all the centuries to come. 3 months later, I stood on the balcony of what was now truly our chambers, watching the sun set over the mountains. Winter had come, blanketing the landscape in pristine white that glittered like diamonds in the fading light. Strong arms encircled my waist from behind, and I leaned back against Lucian with a contented sigh. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured, his lips brushing the sensitive spot just below my ear. "Everything that's changed." I turned in his embrace, looping my arms around his neck. 3 months ago, I would have died rather than stand in a vampire's arms. And now... His eyes glinted with mischief and desire. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. It wasn't an easy path we had chosen. The integration of our two societies faced resistance from both sides. Humans who couldn't forget their losses, and vampires who couldn't surrender their superiority. But slowly, village by village, city by city, we were building something new. The council had been reformed after Bathory's betrayal, with Lucian taking Corvinus's place as High Lord. His first act had been to outlaw blood farms and hunting humans, establishing a system of willing donors who were well compensated and treated with respect. My resistance fighters had become peacekeepers, working alongside vampire warriors to maintain order and protect both species from those who would return to the old ways. And I had become something I never thought possible. A bridge between worlds, respected by vampires and humans alike. The Oath Bride, they called me. The human who tamed the most powerful vampire lord and, in doing so, changed the course of history. "Do you ever regret it?" Lucian asked, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw. The blood oath. All of this. I shook my head without hesitation. How could I regret finding peace? Finding you? He smiled, but something lingered in his eyes. A question yet unasked. I waited, knowing he would speak when ready. "There's something I haven't told you," he said finally. "Something about the blood oath." I tensed slightly. What about it? It's more than just a political binding. His hands found mine, our fingers intertwining. It's an ancient ritual, rarely used because of its power. When two souls are bound by blood willingly, truly willingly, it creates a connection that transcends ordinary bonds. What are you saying? I whispered, though some part of me already knew. I'm saying that I felt it the moment our blood mingled, the potential, the possibility. His eyes held mine, vulnerable in a way I rarely saw him. If you desire it, the blood oath can make you like me. Not fully vampire, but no longer fully human either. A hybrid with the strengths of both. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. You mean immortality? A form of it. A life measured in centuries rather than decades. His thumb stroked across my knuckles. It would mean you wouldn't have to age while I remain the same. It would mean not having to say goodbye. The thought stole my breath. Not death, but its opposite. An eternity with Lucian. An eternity to build the world we had started to create. How? I asked, my voice barely audible. A second ritual, the completion of what we began. His gaze was solemn. But Isolde, it must be your choice. Freely made, with full understanding of what you'd be giving up. And what would that be? The simplicity of humanity, the certainty of an end. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. I won't lie to you. It's not an easy existence. There is beauty in mortality that the endless years can dim. I considered his words, the weight of the choice before me, to remain human, to live out my natural life with him, and then leave him to face eternity alone. Or to step into the unknown, to embrace a new form of existence with all its complexities. I don't need to decide now, I asked. No, you have time. He pressed his forehead to mine. I would wait a lifetime for your answer, Isolde. I smiled, turning my face to capture his lips in a kiss that spoke of promises and possibilities. You won't have to wait that long. But tonight? Tonight? His voice roughened as my hands slid beneath his shirt, tracing the cool perfection of his skin. Tonight, let's just be what we are. A vampire and a human who found love when they should have found hatred. I pulled him closer, reveling in the way his body responded to mine. Show me what forever could feel like. His answer was a kiss that burned through me like wildfire, consuming everything but the certainty that I had found my place in the world. Not as a resistance fighter, not as a political pawn, but as a woman who had dared to love her enemy and, in doing so, had changed the fate of two species. As Lucian carried me to our bed, his eyes darkening with desire and tenderness, I knew that whatever choice I made about immortality, I had already claimed a kind of eternity in his arms. I own you, he whispered against my skin, echoing the words of our first meeting. And yet, I would die for you. I pulled him down to me, my heart overflowing with a love I had never thought possible. And you, I breathed. In this life and whatever comes after. The blood oath that had begun as chains had become wings, lifting us beyond the limitations of our separate worlds into something new, something revolutionary. Not subjugation, not submission, but unity, born of choice and sealed with love. The wind carried secrets through Mourner's Wood, whispering tales that most villagers had long forgotten. I was not like most villagers. My name is Bellamy Thorne, and I have always heard what others could not, or perhaps would not, hear. My grandmother's cottage perched at the edge of our timeless English village, where crumbling stone walls met whispering willows. The building itself seemed to sag with age, as if surrendering to the weight of stories contained within its walls. I'd lived there since I was 7, when my parents vanished during an expedition to catalog rare orchids in South America. You have their restlessness, Gran would say, her eyes following me as I paced our small living room. Never content to stay in one place. It's the Thorne blood. She never spoke of my great-uncle, the famed botanist Mr. Edmund Thorne, except in fragments. a cautionary tale meant to keep me tethered to safety. Yet somehow, knowing we shared a surname made the mystery of his abandoned garden all the more compelling. Tonight, the autumn air slipped through my open bedroom window, carrying the scent of wet earth and decay, not unpleasant, but rich with possibility. I couldn't sleep. Not that sleep ever came easily to me. My shift at the countryside inn had ended hours ago, but my mind refused to quiet itself. The dreams had returned with greater intensity. Vines coiling around my wrists, voices murmuring in languages that shifted between familiar and foreign. I rolled from my bed and dressed silently. Gran's bedroom door remained closed, her soft snores audible through the thin walls. Taking my worn leather journal and a small silver penlight, I descended the creaking stairs and stepped into the night. The moon hung full and heavy, casting long shadows across the village green. Most windows remained dark at this hour, the village surrendering to slumber. Only I moved through its silence, a ghost among the living. My feet knew the path before my mind acknowledged where I was headed. Beyond the last row of cottages, past the graveyard with its listing stones, around the bend where foxgloves grew wild in summer, there stood the iron gate. It was more magnificent than village gossip suggested. 10 feet tall and wrought in a pattern of intertwining branches and blooms, it seemed not merely a barrier but a warning rendered in metal. Rust clung to its lower bars, yet the lock gleamed oddly bright, as if recently polished. "The vines are older than your dreams," Gran had warned just yesterday, her gnarled fingers wrapped around her teacup. "Promise me you'll stay away from that place, Bellamy." I had nodded, as I always did. But promises, like rules, had never managed to take root in my nature. The gate should have been locked. It had been locked for decades, according to village lore. Yet when my fingers brushed against the latch, it yielded with a sigh. The hinges remained silent as the gate swung inward, inviting me to step across the threshold. I hesitated. Stories of Mr. Thorne's garden had circulated through our village for generations. Some said he had cultivated plants from the far corners of the world, species that should never have been brought to English soil. Others whispered that he had discovered something beneath the earth, something that changed him, consumed him, until one day he simply vanished, leaving only his wild garden behind. A sudden breeze rustled the trees beyond the gate, carrying notes of lavender and something deeper, musk, earth, and time. My heartbeat quickened. This was madness, surely. To enter a place that had been sealed off for decades, a place my grandmother had explicitly forbidden. Yet the dreams had called me here. Night after night, the vines had reached for me, beckoning. "Just a quick look," I whispered to myself, my voice strangely loud in the midnight silence. "I'll be out before dawn." With that hollow reassurance, I stepped through the gate. The transformation was immediate and bewildering. Where I had expected neglect and decay, I found vitality. The path beneath my feet was not overgrown, but neatly lined with luminescent mushrooms that pulsed with a gentle blue light. Trees that should have been skeletal in the autumn chill instead bore heavy fruit and vibrant leaves. Flowers bloomed in impossible colors. Deep purples that shifted to blue when I turned my head, reds so vivid they seemed to throb with heartbeats of their own. The air hung thick with crushed time and something else, a scent like old parchment and dreams. I drew it deep into my lungs and felt my thoughts soften around the edges. My fingers relaxed their grip on my journal. What had I been worried about? This place was beautiful, welcoming. I wandered deeper, following the winding path as it curved between towering hedges studded with white roses. Their perfume grew stronger with each step, sweet, yet not cloying. Time blurred. Had I been walking for minutes or hours? The moonlight filtering through the canopy above seemed unchanged, yet the stars had shifted in patterns I couldn't quite track. A soft sound reached me, water flowing over stones. Following it, I emerged into a clearing dominated by a circular pond. At its center stood a statue of a woman, arms outstretched, water pouring from her palms into the pool below. The sculpture appeared ancient, yet the details remained crisp, each finger perfectly formed, her expression one of serene knowledge. I knelt at the pond's edge and peered into its depths. Instead of a reflection, I saw memories. Not my own, but fragments of lives I'd never lived. A man in Victorian clothing examining a strange purple flower. A woman laughing as butterflies landed on her shoulders. Children dancing around a maypole, their faces blurred by speed and joy. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice asked from behind me. I startled, nearly toppling into the water. Turning, I found myself facing a woman unlike any I'd encountered in our village. She stood beneath a white lilac tree that should not have been blooming this late in the year. Her dress seemed woven from bark and ash, clinging to her form before dissolving into what looked like roots at her feet. Her hair cascaded in waves of moss green, framing a face both youthful and ancient. "I didn't mean to intrude," I said, rising to my feet. The gate was open. "The gate is always open to a thorn," she replied, her voice carrying notes of velvet and decay. "Though few remember to listen when it calls." My skin prickled. "How do you know my name?" Her laugh sounded like leaves rustling. "I don't know your name, dreamer. I know your blood." She ventured closer, her movements fluid as water. "You are a thief, though not an unwelcome one. You come here hungering." I didn't deny it. The accusation rang true in ways I couldn't articulate. All my life I'd drifted. Between jobs, between lovers, between versions of myself. Always searching for something I couldn't name. Always hungry for more. "Who are you?" I asked, finding my voice again. "Do you live here? Did you know my great-uncle?" "Names have power here," she said, ignoring my questions. "Some call me the gardener. Others, the memory keeper." She reached into a pocket of her strange dress and produced a blackberry that shimmered like oil in the moonlight. "What do you seek in this place, Bellamy Thorn? Why do the dreams call you here night after night?" I stared at her, shock rendering me momentarily speechless. How could you possibly know about my dreams? "The garden knows what it needs," she replied cryptically, "and it has needed a thorn for a very long time." She extended her hand, offering the blackberry. It pulsed with an inner light, unlike any fruit I'd ever seen. "Eat and stay," she whispered. "Or leave and forget." A warning bell sounded in some distant part of my mind, a memory of Gran's voice cautioning against precisely this moment. Yet curiosity had always been my besetting sin. I reached for the fruit, its weight surprisingly substantial in my palm. "What will happen if I eat it?" I asked. "You will remember," she said simply. "Remember what?" Her smile deepened. "Everything." I studied the blackberry, turning it between my fingers. The surface rippled like water, reflecting fragments of memories. My childhood, my parents' faces, moments I'd thought long forgotten. "Why me?" I asked, still hesitating. "The garden chooses its keeper," she explained. "For generations it has been a thorn. Your great-uncle served faithfully until he could no longer bear the weight of remembering. Since then, the garden has waited, growing wild, preserving what must not be lost." "And what's that?" "The forgotten knowledge of the world," she said. "The memories people discard, the dreams they abandon, the truths they find too painful to carry." I looked around at the impossibly vibrant plants, the luminescent fungi, and the statue with its endless flow of water. "This is more than just a garden, isn't it?" "Much more," she confirmed. "It is a repository of what humanity chooses to forget. Someone must remember Bellamy. Someone must tend these memories, or they fade forever. The blackberry pulsed more urgently in my hand. And if I refuse? Then you walk back through the gate, and the dreams will cease. You will find the contentment that has eluded you, perhaps settle into the life of a village night porter. The garden will wait for another thorn to answer its call. Contentment. The word should have tempted me, yet it sounded hollow. All my restless wandering, the constant dissatisfaction, had it been the garden calling me home all along? I raised the fruit to my lips, decision made. I've never been good at refusing the unknown. The moment the blackberry touched my tongue, the world exploded into clarity. Colors intensified, scents sharpened, and sounds. Oh, the sounds. I heard every insect's wing, every root pushing through soil, every star singing in the heavens above. My knees buckled, and I sank to the earth as memories flooded my consciousness. I remembered walking these paths with my great-uncle as a child, something that had never happened, yet I recalled with perfect clarity. I remembered ancient civilizations rising and falling, languages evolving and dying, species disappearing from the earth. I remembered the feel of dinosaur hide beneath my fingertips, the taste of fruits now extinct, the sound of music played on instruments long forgotten. These aren't my memories, I gasped. They are the garden's memories, the woman said, kneeling beside me. And now, they are yours to tend. The ground beneath me softened. Vines emerged from the soil, wrapping gently around my ankles, not restraining but welcoming. Grass and moss climbed my legs, creating a living cushion. Am I becoming part of the garden? I asked, surprised by the lack of fear in my voice. You are becoming its keeper, she corrected. As Edmund was before you, the garden will sustain you, and you will sustain it. A perfect symbiosis. As she spoke, I felt roots extending from my fingertips into the soil, connecting me to every plant, every creature that dwelled within the garden's boundaries. Information flowed through these connections, life cycles, growth patterns, the secret language of flowers and fungi. Knowledge that humans had once possessed and then discarded as imagination or superstition. What about my grandmother? I asked, even as I felt myself settling deeper into the earth. Time moves differently here, the woman said, her form already beginning to fade like morning mist. You may visit her in dreams, ease her worries. One day when she's ready, you may even guide her here. Who are you? I asked again, reaching for her dissolving figure. Really? Her smile was the last part of her to fade. I am what remains when everything else is forgotten. I am the memory of the first garden, the echo of creation. And now, I can rest, for the garden has found its new keeper. As her voice trailed into silence, I felt a profound shift within myself. The restlessness that had haunted me all my life settled into purpose. The hunger transformed into understanding. I was exactly where I belonged, where I had always been meant to be. Days passed, or perhaps years. Time held little meaning in the garden. I learned to shape the growth around me, to call forth blooms that hadn't existed for millennia, to whisper to the seeds of plants not yet born. I became fluent in the language of roots and rainfall. Occasionally, villagers would approach the gate, drawn by curiosity or dares. I watched them through the eyes of birds, listened through the rustle of leaves. They saw only an overgrown, impenetrable tangle, the garden showing them what they expected to see. But for those who came seeking healing or wisdom, those with open hearts and genuine need, the gate would yield. I would guide them, without revealing myself, to plants that might ease their ailments or berries that would help them remember lost loves or forgotten dreams. They would leave changed, carrying fragments of ancient memory back into the world. My grandmother came once, months after my disappearance. She stood at the gate, her aged hand resting on the iron latch. "Bellamy," she called, her voice quavering. "If you're in there, give me a sign." I sent a gentle breeze to carry the scent of her favorite roses, ones I'd cultivated specially for her, infused with memories of her childhood. A white butterfly landed on her shoulder, bearing my silent message of reassurance. She nodded, tears glistening on her cheeks. "You found your place," she whispered. "Just like Edmund did. Watch over us, my restless boy." I learned later that she told the village I had moved to London to pursue art, a kindness to preserve my memory in their minds, and perhaps to protect the garden's secrets. When she passed, peacefully in her sleep the following winter, I welcomed her spirit into the garden. She dwells now in the rose bushes near the eastern wall, their blooms carrying her laughter. As for me, I have found peace in my rootedness. My hands have become instruments of growth, my eyes windows to centuries past and futures yet unwoven. The dreams no longer haunt me, for I am the keeper of all dreams now. Sometimes, on moonlit nights when the veil between worlds thins, I can almost perceive my human form again. A memory of the restless young man who once worked as a night porter and yearned for something more. I smile at his innocence, grateful for his courage in stepping through the gate. The villagers speak of the garden still, their stories evolving with each generation. They call it the Garden of Remembering, though few understand the truth behind the name. They say that on full moon nights, if you press your ear to the old stone wall, you can hear a lullaby drifting from within, a melody woven of rosemary and regret, of ancient knowledge and tender growth. They say that sometimes, if your need is great and your heart is true, the iron gate will open for you. That inside, a garden of impossible wonders awaits, tended by a gardener with moss-green eyes and roots for fingers. They say he will offer you a blackberry that shimmers like oil. Choose wisely, should you ever find yourself at that gate. For some hungers, once satisfied, transform you forever. Some curiosities, once indulged, can never be undone. But if your soul, like mine, has always yearned for deeper connection, if you felt the whisper of ancient memories in your dreams and the call of forgotten knowledge in your blood, then perhaps the garden waits for you too. Listen for its call on the wind. Follow the path beyond the whispering willows. The gate is never truly locked to those who need to remember. And I will be waiting, among the luminescent mushrooms and never-withering flowers, ready to welcome another seeker home. For this is the truth I have learned as keeper of the Garden of Remembering. We are all, in our way, collections of memories, some our own, some inherited, some forgotten, until the moment they bloom unexpectedly within us. To tend these memories with care, to preserve what might otherwise be lost to time's relentless march. This is not just my purpose now. It is my joy. So sleep now, dear listener, and in your dreams, perhaps you'll wander to my garden's edge. Perhaps you'll hear the leaves speaking in voices half remembered from childhood. Perhaps you'll catch the scent of impossible flowers blooming out of season. And perhaps, just perhaps, you'll understand that the veil between memory and dream is thinner than you ever imagined. Rest well, dream deeply, and remember. The desert night wrapped around me like a lover's caress as I scaled the palace walls, each ancient stone whispering secrets against my fingertips. Below, Zafira sprawled in glittering darkness, amber lanterns bleeding light into shadows thick enough to drown in. The air tasted of cardamom and danger, saffron and sin. Every breath carried my mother's ghost stories about jinn, who danced in dust devils and granted wishes to fools brave enough to ask. I am Nadir, son of a traitor, king of Zafira's shadows. The nobles spat thief like a curse, but I preferred liberator of misplaced treasures. My hands bore the geography of survival, calluses mapping close escapes, scars charting calculated risks. Tonight's prize waited in forbidden ruins beyond the city walls. But first I needed information from someone who'd rather watch me bleed out in these very streets. Lord Kareem's study lay beyond the ornate window above me, stained glass casting jewel-toned shadows across my skin like war paint. 3 days ago, the silk-wrapped snake had cornered me in the merchant quarter's twisted alleys, his perfumed threats sharper than any blade. Find the artifact in the ruins, or watch your father's crimes spill from my lips to the Sultan's ear. My father could rot for all I cared. The bastard had earned whatever hell awaited him. But Kareem's knowledge threatened my carefully woven network of debts and favors, the spider's web that kept me breathing in this unforgiving city. Each step toward that window pulled the noose tighter around my throat. The window latch surrendered to my picks with a whisper that might as well have been a scream in the stillness. Moonlight filtered through latticed screens, painting silver lace across scrolls and ancient texts. The room reeked of ink and aging parchment, but underneath lurked something older, something that raised every hair on my neck and set my teeth on edge. I moved like smoke across the intricate carpet, soft leather boots finding purchase between the patterns. My breath caught as a door creaked, sharp as breaking bones in the quiet. I melted behind heavy curtains that smelled of dust and secrets, my lungs burning as I held my breath. Through the gauzy fabric, I watched Lord Kareem enter. But he wasn't alone. The woman who followed, Christ's blood. Her feet didn't touch the ground. Starlight caught in her hair like trapped constellations, and power radiated from her skin in waves that made my bones ache with longing. "The thief retrieves it tonight," Kareem said, satisfaction dripping from his voice like honey from a blade. Moonlight caught his rings, each gem worth more than most earned in a lifetime. "Once he brings the veil, we begin." The floating woman's laugh chimed like crystal shattering in reverse, beautiful and terrible. "Careful, my lord. Some prizes burn those who grasp them too eagerly." Her voice carried echoes of windswept dunes and star-drunk nights, and something deep in my chest responded like a struck chord. They drifted deeper into the palace, their words fading, but I had what I needed. A veil waited in those ruins, one that made ethereal beings take notice. Destiny coated my tongue, sweet as stolen honey and twice as dangerous. The desert beyond Zafira's walls knew my secrets, like a lover knows scars. Sand shifted beneath my feet, like liquid silver as I navigated dunes that glowed under the full moon's hungry eye. The ruins rose from the wasteland, like the skeleton of some primordial beast. Black stone columns stretching toward stars close enough to taste. Power thrummed through the air, setting my skin ablaze with anticipation. The entrance to the underground chamber lay half buried, the stone steps worn smooth by centuries of the desert wind's caress. Each step down felt like descending into another world. The air thickened with age and magic, walls gleaming with embedded crystals that cast light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Silence pressed against my ears like cotton soaked in blood, broken only by my ragged breathing and the skitter of things better left unseen. The veil lay in the deepest chamber, the silk wrapping crumbling at my touch like ancient flower petals. Starlight had been woven into its fabric, constellations I recognized from my mother's teachings dancing across the surface in patterns that shifted when I blinked. The moment my fingers brushed the silk, the world exploded. Light tasted like lightning, smelled like the space between stars, burned like the first touch of a lover's mouth. She emerged from the radiance like flame taking human form, and the air itself bowed to her presence. Hair dark as the void between constellations flowed around her like liquid night. Her eyes held centuries of wisdom, pools of molten gold that saw straight through flesh to the trembling soul beneath. Gold bangles adorned her wrists, but these weren't jewelry. They were bonds that pulsed with their own inner fire. Her skin glowed with a radiance that cast shadows in shades I had no names for. At last, the words tumbled from her lips like a blessing and curse combined. Her voice carried notes of singing sand and wind-swept eternity, and something low in my belly clenched in response. I am Aisha, Jinni of the Celestial Court, weaver of destinies, and you, Nadir the thief, have set me free. Every story warned about the dangers of dealing with jinn. Every rational thought screamed at me to run. Instead, I found myself drawn closer, caught in her gravity like a moth to a flame. The space between us crackled with an energy that made my skin sing and my breath catch. 3 boons I offer, she continued, moving with a fluid grace that made her seem to float rather than walk. Each step brought waves of her intoxicating scent, starfire and desert roses, ancient magic and infinite possibility. 3 chances to rewrite the story fate carved into your bones. Choose wisely, for every wish bears a price that burns. Her nearness made my head spin, my senses overwhelmed by her otherworldly presence. Heat radiated from her skin like fever, and I found myself wondering what those full lips would taste like. What do you gain from this arrangement? A smile curved her mouth, mysterious as moonrise. She circled me slowly, her movement stirring air that tasted of honey and lightning. Perhaps I enjoy watching mortals dance with destiny. Her fingertips brushed my shoulder as she passed, leaving trails of fire in their wake. Or perhaps your choices will write a story neither of us can imagine. The touch sent lightning through my veins, and I had to clench my fists to keep from reaching for her. That night marked the beginning of my salvation and damnation. My first wish formed on my lips like a prayer, heavy with consequence. I wish for the means to expose Lord Kareem's darkest secrets. Aisha's eyes flashed like distant lightning. She raised her hands, the gold bangles chiming like temple bells, and the air filled with dancing lights that coalesced into images, secret meetings in shadowed corners, scrolls hidden behind false walls, coins passing between trembling hands. Each scene burned itself into my mind with crystalline clarity. "Be careful, little thief," she murmured, her fingers brushing my cheek with an electric touch that left trails of starlight on my skin. The contact sent heat racing through my blood like wildfire. Knowledge cuts both ways. Lord Kareem's fall from grace sent shockwaves through Zafira's nobility. But Aisha's price revealed itself in my dreams. Nightmares filled with celestial fire that burned cold as winter. Voices speaking in tongues that made my ears bleed. Each morning, I woke to find star marks spreading across my skin, like slow-burning constellations. Each point of light, a reminder of the power coursing through my veins. Aisha stayed with me through those dawn hours when nightmares faded, though she could have vanished into the desert winds. Her presence beside me felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, her touch cooling the burn of transformation. We spent nights on rooftops where the city's heat rose like invisible incense, and she taught me the true names of stars in a language that tasted like stardust. Her laughter made my heart race like a hunted thing, and when our eyes met across crowded markets, the world held its breath. Each accidental touch sent sparks dancing across my skin, adjusting her veil, reaching for the same object, standing close enough that her otherworldly warmth seeped into my bones like wine. I found myself creating excuses to be near her, craving her presence like an addict craves his poison. My second boon went toward protecting those I loved, the street children who served as my eyes and ears, the merchants who helped me fence stolen goods, the elderly couple who'd taken me in after my mother's death. Aisha's magic wove golden threads of protection around them, shimmering in my enhanced vision like morning sunlight on spider silk. But the price was steep. Each person I protected became bound to a prophecy I didn't yet understand, their fates intertwining with mine like threads in an enormous tapestry. The mortal and celestial realms were never meant to touch so closely, Aisha explained one night, as we lay among silk cushions on my hidden rooftop sanctuary. Stars wheeled overhead like scattered diamonds, and her head rested on my chest as if she could hear the way my heart beat in time with her magic. The weight of her, the warmth, it was driving me slowly mad with want. Every time they do, fate demands rebalancing. I traced the patterns of her binding marks, which had begun to fade like old guilt. Her skin felt like moonlight made solid beneath my fingertips, and I had to fight the urge to explore every inch of her with hands and mouth. What happens when they fade completely? Her eyes met mine, ancient sadness swirling in their golden depths. Then I must return to the celestial courts unless... Unless? The word came out rougher than intended, betraying the hunger building in my chest. Unless a mortal soul freely offers to take my place. Her fingers brushed my star-marked skin, sending shivers of pleasure and power through my body. The prophecy speaks of a thief marked by stars who will either bind the realms together or tear them apart forever. Understanding hit like a physical blow. I'm not just your liberator. I'm your replacement. She pulled away, the silk cushions whispering beneath her movement, but I caught her hand. The contact sent sparks of celestial fire dancing between our joined fingers, illuminating the darkness with miniature constellations. No, she whispered, her voice carrying notes of stardust and sorrow. I chose you because, in all my centuries of watching mortals, I've never seen a heart that burns as brightly as yours. The truth of her words resonated in my chest like a struck bell. I drew her back to me, my free hand cupping her face. Her skin felt impossibly smooth, cool, and warm at once. Then trust in that heart now. The kiss was inevitable as sunrise, her lips soft as rose petals but demanding as desert wind. She tasted of starlight and honey, of ancient magic and infinite possibility. When her tongue met mine, heat exploded through my veins like liquid gold. Her hands fisted in my hair, pulling me closer as I mapped the curve of her waist, the silk of her skin. We broke apart, gasping. Our foreheads pressed together as power crackled between us like visible lightning. Dark forces gathered as my star marks spread across my skin like blooming night flowers. Shadows whispered of beings crossing from the celestial realm. Ancient jinn who moved like oil on water and wanted Aisha returned to her bonds. Their presence turned the air thick and cold, making each breath a struggle. We ran through Zafira's labyrinthine streets, where fear mixed with night-blooming jasmine. My knowledge of the city's secrets became our shield. Hidden courtyards where fountains sang midnight lullabies, abandoned towers where desert winds played ethereal melodies, secret gardens where magic still lingered in soil centuries old. Each close escape brought us closer until I couldn't imagine existing without her starlight beside me. In quiet moments between running and hiding, we shared stories like trading precious gems. She spoke of celestial courts, where constellations danced and stars were born in breathtaking explosions of light. I told her of my mother's final days, when she hallucinated celestial beings dancing in corners, their voices calling her home. Between words, we touched, our fingers intertwining, our shoulders brushing, her head on my chest as we caught our breath. Each contact sent heat spiraling through me, building toward something that felt like destiny itself. The final boon hung between us, heavy with consequence. I could wish us both free of the prophecy, but the price would devastate both realms. I saw it in my dreams, worlds tearing apart like wet paper. I could wish her bound to the mortal world forever, but that meant trapping a being of starfire and flesh, watching her light dim like a captive star. The choice was taken from me the night the Shadow Jinn found us. They rose from darkness like smoke given form, their voices harmonizing in tones that made my bones vibrate and my star marks burn like brands. The air grew thick with their power, tasting of ash and endless void. Aisha stood proud before them in our hidden sanctuary, her power flickering like a candle flame refusing to be extinguished. Starlight gathered around her like armor, and despite everything, my breath caught at her fierce beauty, eternal as the desert itself. "Your time ends, sister," one shadow said, the voice like silk sliding over steel. "Balance must be maintained." I stepped between them, my star marks blazing with light that pushed back the darkness. Power surged through my veins, burning away my fear and doubt. There are other ways to maintain balance. Understanding dawned in Aisha's eyes, golden as first light. "Nadir, don't..." I spoke my final wish into existence, each word carrying destiny's weight. I wish for the power to choose my own fate. Magic exploded through the chamber like a star being born. My star marks burned like live coals, each point of light a window to infinity. Ancient power rushed through me, not just celestial fire, but something new, born of my mortal heart and an immortal soul, of human love and divine power. The shadow djinn recoiled as light poured from my body in waves. I reached for Aisha with hands that sparkled like the night sky, completion singing in my blood. "I choose this," I said, my voice carrying echoes of both worlds. "Not as your replacement, but as your equal." Our kiss tasted of stardust and prophecy fulfilled. Power flowed between us like water finding its level, transforming rather than transferring. My mortality mixed with her celestial fire until we became something entirely new. Beings of twilight, walkers between realms. Where our lips met, new stars were born. The shadow djinn bowed before this new magic, recognizing that balance could be found in transformation rather than separation. As they faded like mist before dawn, I pulled Aisha closer, reveling in how our energies danced and merged. "Was this your plan all along?" I asked, watching starlight play across her skin like dancing flames. She smiled, and it held all the mystery of desert night and all the warmth of summer dawn. "I planned to free myself. I never planned to fall in love." We rule the twilight hours now, moving between realms as easily as crossing market streets. The star marks on my skin have become a map of our journey, each point of light a reminder of choices made and prices paid, of love freely given and destiny embraced. Aisha's binding marks have transformed into patterns that match my own, linking us in ways deeper than magic, more eternal than fate. Each night, we dance between starlight and shadow, our powers entwined like lovers' hands. We watch over both realms, helping others find paths between what is and what could be. The desert winds carry our story to those who know how to listen, a tale of a thief who stole a genie's heart and a genie who taught a mortal to touch the stars. In the end, it wasn't power or prophecy that rewrote our destinies. It was love, freely given and freely returned. Each kiss still tastes of starlight. Each touch still sends sparks of magic dancing across our skin. We are one another's greatest wish, greatest risk, and greatest reward. And in the desert night, where magic whispers through ancient stones and starlight weaves patterns of possibility, we continue writing our story. One that proves the greatest power lies not in what we wish for, but in what we choose to become.